Chapter 1329. Wei Rulan's eyes moved slightly when he heard Song Qingshu's words. He naturally did not want to die, not to mention that he was shouldering the mission of his ancestors. However, he could not bring himself to beg for mercy. After hesitating for a while, he could only remain silent with an ugly expression on his face. Song Qingshu did not care and said directly, "Now you have two choices in front of you. One is to choose to be loyal to me. From now on, everything you have belongs to me, including your fiancé." Wei Rulan's face could not help but tremble when he heard this. He said coldly, "If you don't agree, will you die? You are very smart. You deserve to be the top scholar outside of Donghua Gate." Song Qingshu's words of praise sounded particularly harsh to Wei Rulan's ears. "The other choice is to die directly. Of course, I will also take good care of your fiancé." Wei Rulan said angrily, "If the world knows what you said, they will know how despicable and shameless you are." Song Qingshu smiled. To deal with despicable and shameless people, we naturally use despicable and shameless method. Alright, let's not talk so much nonsense. Make your choice. Wei Rulan's eyes flickered. In fact, it was not difficult for him to choose. As long as he was alive, everything was possible. He could succeed in his revenge. He could complete the mission of his ancestors. As for loyalty, would he not regret it in the future? It was not difficult to make a choice. The difficult part was how to make the other party believe in his loyalty. Wei Rulan did not believe that Song Qingshu would be so kind. If it was just a trap for him to jump into, he would still end up dead, and it would be an even more embarrassing death. "What do you see in me?" Wei Rulan was indeed a talented top scholar. He quickly thought of a way. "Although I am proud of my talent, it is obviously not enough to cover up my potential threat to you. If I were you, I would never be so unwise as to nurture a tiger." "What do I see in you?" Song Qingshu looked at him with a faint smile. "If I said that I like your fiancé, would you believe me?" Hearing his words, Wei Rulan's handsome face instantly turned red. The words, "You have gone too far," crossed his mind. However, he was worried that he would lose his last chance to live, so he swallowed the words back. "You are very smart. You know how to retreat in order to advance and dispel my wariness." Song Qingshu stopped smiling and his voice became cold. The reason why he gave Wei Rulan a chance to live was not because he had taken a fancy to her as his fiancée, but because a living Wei Rulan was definitely more valuable than a dead one. He already had a vague outline of a plan in his mind, and he wanted to use Wei Rulan in it. "But you overestimate yourself. You're not qualified to be my opponent, and you can't pose any threat to me." Song Qingshu glanced at him as if he was looking at an ant. Under his gaze, Wei Rulan felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. Even breathing was very difficult. It was only when his opponent moved his gaze that he was able to gasp for breath. His whole body was already drenched in cold sweat, as if he had just climbed out of the water. At this moment, he finally understood that his opponent's strength was beyond his reach. Even if he trained for a lifetime, he would never be able to catch up to his opponent. "Although I can't beat you, I have long heard that the Golden Snake King has many female friends in Jianghu. It would be much easier for me to deal with them." Wei Rulan braced himself and said. He did not want to court death, but at this moment, his mind was filled with the godlike gaze of the other party. He was clear that he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. If he could not find a reason to support his beliefs, he would forever live under his shadow and would never be able to muster the slightest bit of resistance. He could choose to live humbly for the sake of his family's mission, but if he lost his courage and beliefs because of his opponent, then he would never be able to complete his mission. Song Qingshu said indifferently, "You are a smart person, and smart people know how to weigh the pros and cons. You know the consequences of doing this, so unless you are confident that you can defeat me, you will never dare to lay a hand on them." He had just used 100% of his power to perform the soul-shifting technique on Wei Rulin, which was why Wei Rulin had such a big reaction. However, although the soul-shifting technique was magical, its effect was greatly reduced against an expert of Wei Rulin's level. Against an ordinary person, with Song Qingshu's current cultivation, he could even use the soul-shifting technique to turn them into an obedient slave. However, as the target's martial arts became higher or their will became stronger, they would not be able to achieve this effect. At most, they would only be able to temporarily confuse the target's mind. To deal with such an expert, one could only use the soul-shifting technique to leave a soul imprint on them. This would subtly influence their behavior and way of thinking, similar to the psychological suggestions of later generations. The soul imprint that Song Qingshu left on Wei Rulin was to create a feeling that he was far stronger than him, that he could not resist and could only choose to submit. Of course, with Wei Rulin's cultivation and will, this kind of imprint could not be completed in one go. Therefore, it required Song Qingshu to continuously destroy his mental defenses and continuously deepen the imprint. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Wei Rulin's expression changed. Although he was unwilling to admit it, the other party had clearly seen through his mind. This feeling of being defenseless made him shudder. At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open from the outside, and a beautiful figure staggered in. Who else could it be but Shi Shangyun? It turned out that she had finally recovered and was worried about her lover's injuries. She struggled to get up from the bed and dragged her weak body over to check on the situation. The beggar clan's disciples did not stop her, perhaps because they had received instructions or something else. Shi Shangyun immediately cried out in alarm when she saw her lover's pale face and the vital parts of his body being restrained by Song Qingshu. It was as if Song Qingshu could take his life with just a flick of his finger. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. Isn't it obvious? I want to take his life, it's up to him to decide. Shi Shangyun suddenly felt as if she had been deceived, and a line of blood rushed to the top of her head. But you promised me that you would save him. She had made such a huge sacrifice, but the other party actually did not acknowledge it. Although he did not really eat her, the degree of his actions was not much different from losing his innocence. Thinking of the embarrassing scenes from before, she was ashamed and angry, and her whole body could not help but tremble. I did promise to help you save him, and I also fulfilled my promise. Otherwise, he would have died from the cold poison attacking his heart by now, Song Qingshu replied indifferently. Then why do you want to take his life? Shi Shangyun even wondered if Song Qingshu was playing some kind of word game with her to trick her. You should ask your sweetheart about this. Song Qingshu sneered. Shi Shangyun looked at Wei Rulin in confusion, but the other party pursed her lips and turned her head to the side. It seems that he also knows how to be embarrassed, Song Qingshu said with a face full of mockery. Your good lover took advantage of the time when I was healing him to bite the hand that fed him. He even used the northern underworld divine technique to try and absorb my inner strength. Do you think I will let him go after this again and again? Shi Shangyun almost fainted when she found out about this. She glared at her lover, angry and disappointed. Brother Wei, how could you do such an unwise thing? There were still some words that she couldn't say. In order to save him, she had even sacrificed her chastity. In the end, his unwise actions made all of her sacrifices meaningless. Wei Rulin was originally brooding over the deal between her fiancé and Song Qingshu. Now that she heard the accusation in his tone, she immediately exploded. What I want to do is none of your business. You did such a shameful thing yourself, and you still have the face to accuse me? Hearing him mention this matter, Shi Shangyun's face instantly paled. She couldn't help but turn her head and angrily glare at Song Qingshu. This was because he had clearly promised her that he wouldn't tell Wei Rulin about this matter. Song Qingshu coughed and said to Wei Rulin, what I said just now was just a lie. Nothing happened between me and Miss Shi. If you don't believe me, you can ask her yourself. Shi Shangyun hurriedly nodded her head. Brother Wei, we really didn't do anything. Originally, when she said this, she was thinking that she really didn't lose her chastity, so she seemed to be in the right. However, as she spoke, she couldn't help but think of everything that happened just now. Those scenes were no different from losing her chastity, so she unknowingly weakened her imposing manner. Wei Rulan turned her head to look at her fiancé. She saw that her hair was messy, and her usually fair skin was flushed. Then, she thought of how she staggered when she entered the door. She didn't know that she was exhausted by Huan's true qi, and even thought that she was a freshly broken melon that couldn't walk properly. Countless scenes that made him want to explode kept appearing in his mind. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? I'll believe this kind of nonsense. Even though she knew that Wei Rulan did it to save her and shouldn't blame her, Wei Rulan was a man after all. This kind of thing was taboo for men, so it was inevitable that there was a sense of disgust in his tone. Shi Shangyun's face turned slightly pale. She had always been a proud and arrogant young lady. This time, she sacrificed so much to save him, and even humbly explained to him, who knew that not only did he not appreciate it, but he also didn't believe her at all, which made her extremely disappointed. However, they were still childhood sweethearts after all. Shi Shangyun took a deep breath to calm her emotions, and finally explained again, whether it is or not, in the future, the truth will be revealed. She originally wanted to say that he would naturally understand that she was still a virgin on their wedding night. However, there was a third person present at this time, and a woman's modesty prevented her from saying it clearly. Moreover, because of Wei Rulan's attitude, with her usual temperament, even if there was no third person present, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to put down her pride and say it clearly. After saying that, Shi Shangyun directly walked towards Song Qingshu and said with a complicated expression, "Prince Song, can you be magnanimous and let him go?" Song Qingshu smiled faintly. "Let's discuss this matter outside." After saying that, he sealed Wei Rulan's acupuncture point and walked out first. Shi Shangyun hesitantly turned her head to look at her lover, and finally followed after him, clenching her teeth. Chapter 1330. Wei Rulan did not answer. Instead, she kept looking behind him but did not see that beautiful figure. She could not help but ask, why didn't she come back? Her? Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face. He smiled and answered, she wasn't feeling well, so she went back to sleep. She was fine just a moment ago, but she felt unwell after going out for a while. Then, she got a chance to be forgiven. Wei Rulan was not stupid. She naturally thought of something and her expression changed instantly. As if he had guessed what she was thinking, Song Qingshu deliberately said in an ambiguous tone, "You're a smart person. You can guess some things even without me telling you. Speaking of which, I admire you a little." Admire me for what? Wei Rulan tried hard to restrain herself so that her reaction would be more normal. I admire you for making the dignified Shi family's eldest daughter fall in love with you. Song Qingshu clicked his tongue in wonder. She was actually willing to make such a big sacrifice for you. Many couples in this world might not necessarily be able to do this. Wei Rulan was not happy at all when she heard his praise. She was extremely angry and her eyes had turned red. Are you angry now? Song Qingshu did not wait for her to answer and said, That's right. My fiancé was done by another man. Naturally, I would be angry. Wei Rulan's eyes were red but she could not speak at that moment. All that was left was a gurgling sound in her throat. Actually, what you should be feeling right now is not anger but regret. Regret that you were blinded by greed and regret that you shouldn't have gone against me. Song Qingshu's voice turned cold. Shouldn't I have gone against you? Wei Rulan muttered to herself. She could not help but think that if she had not schemed against him in the beginning, she would not have fallen to such a state. Song Qingshu's pitch-black eyes became incomparably deep. Looking at the other's dazed expression, The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he slowly said, "Because of your actions, your life is hanging by a thread. You even had to rely on your fiancée to sell her body to obtain the qualifications to live. Remember what happened today. No matter what you do in the future, you will always be a complete failure in front of me." Loser, I'm a loser. Wei Rulin appeared to be a very determined person from all aspects, but after experiencing great joy and sorrow today, and then being stimulated by Song Qingshu using Shi Shangyun in various ways, cracks would appear in her heart no matter how strong she was. At this moment, the word loser kept reverberating in her mind. She looked as if she had lost her soul, as if she had lost her parents. Song Qingshu had been waiting for this opportunity. He took the opportunity to leave a mark in the depths of the other party's heart that they did not dare to make an enemy out of him. Of course, it was not that he did not want to make Wei Rulin his slave, but he could not do it. For such a person with a strong will and a high cultivation base, even if he broke through the defense of her heart, he could not leave a mark on her as he pleased. He could only take advantage of the situation and go with the flow. After all, the effort to become another person was definitely unacceptable to such a talented and arrogant young man. However, not daring to make an enemy out of him was in line with his inner thoughts to a certain extent. Generally speaking, a man's first reaction when his wife was stolen would definitely be to take revenge. However, if the enemy was so strong that he could never reach in his lifetime, that man would rationally give up his hatred and even cheer for the other party. There were many such cases in history. For example, Ming Wuzong, Zhu Hozhao, called the wife of a minister to spend the night in the palace, and the minister did not even dare to fart. The northern Song Zhenzong's empress, Lu Yi, was the wife of a silversmith in Sichuan in her early years. Later, after entering the palace, she was limited by the lack of foundation and helpers, so she called her ex-husband into the palace to serve as the emperor's imperial bodyguard. In the end, that silversmith did not have any hatred for his wife, and loyally guarded his wife's current husband throughout his life. Why would such a thing happen that defied common sense? There was no other reason than the huge difference in strength between the two parties. Although women were important to a man, they were not necessarily the most important. Seeing Wei Rulin's dazed expression, Song Qingshu knew that his plan had succeeded. Naturally, he had no interest in staying here to talk nonsense with her, so he directly left the room. Meanwhile, Shi Shangyun was waiting for him in another room. Seeing him enter, she hurriedly stood up. "How is Brother Wei?" "Don't worry, he won't die. Song Qingshu had just healed him." Although he was interrupted by Wei Rulin's northern underworld divine art, he had already successfully dispelled most of the cold poison in his body. Although he had not fully recovered, his life was no longer in danger. "Then, when can we leave?" Hearing that her lover was safe, Shi Shangyun secretly let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly asked. "You can leave at any time." Shi Shangyun did not have the time to rejoice. Song Qingshu's next sentence made her stunned on the spot. "But when did I say that Wei Rulin could leave?" Shi Shangyun subconsciously replied, "Didn't you promise me before?" "I only promised to save him, I did not promise to let him go." Song Qingshu smiled like an old fox. "You." Shi Shangyun immediately realized that she had fallen into a verbal trap. "After you persuade your father to launch the censure according to the agreement, I will naturally let him go." Song Qingshu did not want to overstimulate him and cause him to have any reverse psychology, so he immediately said, "Actually, you don't have to overreact. If I let him go now, it would be harming him." As expected, Shi Shangyun's attention was diverted. "What do you mean? Didn't I say it before? When I was healing him, he used northern underworld qi to harm me, causing the treatment to be interrupted. The cold air flowed back into his internal organs, so I need some time to completely heal him." Song Qingshu's skill in deceiving people had reached perfection. When he spoke, his face was serious and his heart did not beat fast. So that's how it is. Sure, Shang-Yun knew that what had just happened was not related to him. If you are worried, you can continue to stay here to accompany him. Song Qinshu suddenly laughed. I don't want to. Sure, Shang-Yun subconsciously exclaimed. I'm afraid that Wei Rulin will be sad if she hears this. Song Qinshu said with a faint smile. I'll go back first. Sure, Shang-Yun blushed. Of course, it was not that she did not want to accompany Wei Rulin, but she was embarrassed to admit that she was recalling the soul-stirring scene just now. She was afraid that something would really happen between her and Song Qinshu if she stayed. Moreover, after going through that torment just now, her whole body was sticky with sweat. For a woman, this was really terrible. At this moment, she just wanted to go home and take a good bath. Before leaving, Sure Shang-Yun suddenly turned her head. Just now when you called me out, you just sat quietly facing each other for half an hour. What do you mean by that? Song Qinshu smiled, as if he had no intention of hiding it. Of course it's to make your fiancé misunderstand that we are doing something indescribable. Chapter 1331. Hearing his words, Sure Shang-Yun was startled at first, but she quickly reacted and blushed. How can you be so despicable? I'm despicable? Song Qinshu smiled lightly. Compared to how your lover harmed me, I'm much kinder to retaliate with this little trick. Sure Shang-Yun opened her mouth, but found that she couldn't find any words to refute him. Song Qinshu then continued, in fact, you don't have to care so much. If Wei Rulin really loves you, this little trick won't affect her at all. If she misunderstands you because of this, it proves that the relationship between the two of you isn't that solid. Even if you don't test it out this time, there will be problems sooner or later. Instead of regretting it in the future, it's better to stop the damage as soon as possible. In this way, you should thank me. Sure Shang-Yun was confused by his words and muttered to herself, what you said is somewhat reasonable. Forget it. She then frowned and left with a heavy heart. Looking at her departing figure, Song Qinshu smiled slightly. Although Sure Shang-Yun was born into a wealthy family and had a vision beyond that of ordinary women, her family didn't necessarily teach her about the matters between men and women. In this aspect, she was no different from other girls and didn't know that the most untested thing in this world was love. Young master's means are really brilliant. With just a little trick, you've separated a pair of lovers whose love is stronger than gold. It was unknown when Chen Yuliang emerged from the shadows. It's still too early to say that they've separated. Song Qinshu wasn't surprised that Chen Yuliang saw through the trick. It would be surprising if this conniving expert didn't even have this little skill. Chen Yuliang smiled. This proud miss sure can't escape from young master's hands. Song Qinshu didn't comment and didn't explain that all this was not for Sure Shang-Yun. Instead, he changed the topic. How's the arrangement of creating public opinion for Yu Fei to reverse the verdict? Young master, rest assured. The beggar gang doesn't have many advantages, but it has many members. I guarantee that in less than half a month, the whole Lin An city will know about this matter. Chen Yuliang smiled flatteringly. That's good. Song Qinshu nodded. In addition, it's not convenient for me. Let Wei Rulin stay here and keep a close eye on her. If she's gone, I'll hold you responsible. His current residence was provided by the Southern Song officials. Wei Rulin was the imperial court's top scholar, and there were many people in the residence. If people saw that he imprisoned her, there would be a lot of trouble. Wei Rulin won't be lost. This is the headquarters of the beggar clan. Even though it's not a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, but looking at the whole world, only someone like young master can escape unscathed. Chen Yuliang flattered. I hope it's as you say. Song Qinshu waved his sleeves. I'll be leaving first. Remember to inform me if anything happens. After saying the last word, he had already disappeared without a trace. Chen Yuliang put away the shock in his heart and his eyes darkened. After a long time, he sighed and turned to return to his room. When Song Qinshu returned to the Junwang Fu, He was shocked to find that Xiao Long Nu and the others had not returned. He looked up at the moon in the sky and frowned. Li Qingluo didn't kidnap Xiao Long Nu, did she? Was she trying to frame him? After all, he had promised the Southern Song Court that Xiao Long Nu would stay in the city. However, Song Qingshu quickly denied this speculation. Although Li Qingluo hated him, she was a smart woman. She knew that this would only cause him a little trouble. With his martial arts and power, he was not afraid of the Southern Song Court. Moreover, he believed that Xiao Long Nu would not harm him in the end. Song Qingshu did not waste time thinking about this. He ordered the servants in the fu to prepare a few dishes. When the dishes were served, he dismissed the servant girls and manservants and sat by the window to drink alone under the moon. After drinking for a long time, he suddenly raised the wine cup to block his throat. Then, a shining sword pierced it. The wine cup was a fragile object. Not to mention a sharp sword, even an ordinary iron ruler could easily shatter it. However, the wine cup in Song Qingshu's hand was like a rock. The other party's sword did not even leave a white mark on it. Song Qingshu used one hand to block the other party's sharp sword. With a light brush of his other hand, the peanuts on the table shot out like bullets. Then, there was a muffled groan in the room. The assassin's acupuncture point was hit and he fell to the ground. Hearing the gentleness in the other party's voice, Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but laugh. It's really strange. Why are all the assassins that come to kill me always female? It seems that the heavens treat me well. I just hope that you don't look too ugly, so that I won't waste my mercy. The female assassin's movements were a little strange. In addition, Song Qingshu did not use his full strength. So, at the critical moment, she twisted her body to avoid being hit. After experiencing the initial numbness, she recovered a little and was about to struggle to stand up. When she heard his words, her body went limp and she almost fell to the ground again. You're still as shameless as before. Song Qingshu made a sound of surprise. This voice sounds familiar. There's no ugly person that can leave an impression on me. As he spoke, he reached out his hand. The woman tried to dodge, but the veil on her face was still removed, revealing a charming and affectionate face. So, it's the White Lotus School saintess, Tang Sire. No, I should call you Fumini. Song Qingshu sat down on a chair calmly. Speaking of which, you barged into my room in the middle of the night. Don't tell me you're lusting after my manhood? Although Tang Sire was usually seductive in the White Lotus School, she was still defeated by Song Qingshu. How can you be so shameless? Ladies' room. Ugh, don't blame me for not reminding you. You should be more polite to your master, Song Qingshu said calmly. Tang Sire's face darkened. What master? It seems that women are indeed forgetful creatures. Song Qingshu sighed. Don't tell me that you don't even remember that you've been poisoned by my 3 corpses brain divine pill and leopard embryo muscle tendon changing pill. At this point, he began to despise himself for not having any tender feelings for the fairer sex. He had actually poisoned such a seductive beauty with such a vicious poison. Moreover, he had poisoned her with 2 at the same time. A hint of indignation flashed across Tang Sire's face when she recalled her trip to the Jin Kingdom. However, she quickly restrained herself and took a deep breath. I haven't forgotten. You haven't forgotten? You still dare to assassinate me? Song Qingshu's voice turned cold. Although it's still a long time before the poison takes effect, I can fulfill your wish if you want to die. Tang Sire bit her lip. There was not a hint of anger in her voice. If I can't save Wei Rulin, there's no point in me living in this world. Chapter 1332. Song Qingshu did not expect Tang Sire to have come for Wei Rulin. Originally, he thought that the two of them had nothing to do with each other. When he thought about how Wei Rulin not only had a rich young lady who was dead set on him, but also a charming White Lotus saintess who risked her life to save him, Song Qingshu suddenly realized that he was a little jealous of his astonishing charm. I was wondering where Wei Rulin got his carefree sex martial arts from. So it was you who passed it on to him. You really don't care about anything. As Song Qinshu spoke, he realized that he was a little unhappy. Since Tang Sire had passed on the carefree sex divine martial arts to Wei Rulin, it proved that their relationship was not ordinary. Even though he did not have any feelings for Tang Sire, he could not help but feel a little uncomfortable when he thought about a beauty being possessed by another man. Men's deep-rooted bad habits. Song Qinshu could not help but laugh at himself. Did you know that Wei Rulin has a fiancé? Song Qinshu wanted to see her reaction when she heard this, but he was disappointed. Tang Sire's gaze did not waver at all. I know. Song Qinshu was very surprised and could not help but ask, aren't you angry at all? Why would I be angry? Tang Sire looked at him blankly. If it was said that Song Qinshu was jealous of Wei Rulin in the beginning, then it had now turned into pure admiration. He was able to make two women with extraordinary identities submit to him, to the point that they were not jealous of each other at all. He was able to enjoy the blessings of having two wives. This was something that even he could not do. Then what's your relationship with Wei Rulin? She was so magnanimous that even Song Qinshu was a little suspicious. He's the most important person in my life, and he's also the person I care about the most. Tang Sire's eyes turned red as she spoke, and tears flowed down uncontrollably. Looking at the woman in front of him who was crying, Song Qinshu looked depressed. Although Gu Long said that a woman's tears are the most powerful weapon in the world, this trick is useless against me. Who knew that after hearing his words, not only did Tang Sire not stop, but she cried even harder. Song, we've only been gone for a short while, and you've already made our sex holy maiden cry. The rumors in the pugilistic world are indeed true. What a womanizer! A burst of cold laughter came from outside the door, and then two peerless beauties walked in. One was a bright and charming young woman, and the other was an elegant and refined young girl. It was Li Qingluo and Xiaolong Niu. Before Song Qinshu had time to answer, Tang Sire's face turned pale. She looked at the person who came in incredulously and murmured, Master? She never thought that she would meet the hierarch here, so she was a little panicked for a moment. Li Qingluo glanced at her indifferently. You're very good. You've done a lot of things behind my back. Xiaolong Niu quietly walked to the side, as if what happened in the room had nothing to do with her. I don't dare, Tang Sire replied hurriedly. Li Qingluo no longer looked at her. Instead, she looked at Song Qinshu with a questioning gaze. What's going on? Song Qinshu shrugged and roughly explained the situation. In the end, he even added a little sourly, you were full of praise for this Wei Rulin before, and you even considered marrying your daughter to him. I didn't believe you at the time, but looking at it now, I was too naive. Wei Rulin? Li Qingluo did not pay attention to his joke. Instead, she suddenly turned to look at Tang Sire. You should know that the White Lotus Holy Maiden must remain a virgin for the rest of her life. At the side, Song Qinshu's eyebrows twitched. He thought that this rule was quite perverted. He did not know how Zhou Jiruo had managed to bluff her way out of it in the past. Tang Sire's face turned red and she hurriedly explained, Master, you've misunderstood. Wei Rulin and I are not in the kind of relationship you think. Then what is it? Li Qingluo's voice grew sterner. This was probably the first time Song Qinshu had felt the dignity of a sect master emanating from her. He could not help but stare at her a few more times. If I hadn't seen her in bed before, perhaps I really would have been frightened by her aura. Song Qinshu secretly clicked his tongue. Tang Sire opened her mouth, and her eyes revealed a conflicted look. In the end, she said nothing. Li Qingluo narrowed her eyes, and the air in the room seemed to grow colder. How have I treated you all these years? Tang Sire bit her lip, but in the end she still answered, Your kindness is as heavy as a mountain. Li Qingluo snorted coldly and suddenly made her move. Her palm struck towards the top of Tang Sire's head. Song Qingshu was shocked, and just as he was about to stop her, he saw Tang Sire tap the ground with the tip of her foot, and her entire body dodged with an extremely profound footwork. The subtle steps on water. You've really hidden it well. Li Qingluo did not continue to make her move. She only stared at her coldly. Tang Sire smiled bitterly. Isn't Master the same? He obviously knows all the divine skills of the Xiaoyao sect, but he usually teaches me other martial arts. It seems that you've investigated me very clearly over these years. Li Qingluo said expressionlessly, but Song Qingshu could keenly sense a flash of killing intent from her. However, what made Song Qingshu even more curious was the conversation between the two just now. When he was in the Jin Kingdom, he knew that Tang Sire was a disciple of the Xiaoyao sect. Later, he learned about Li Qingluo's martial arts. He only thought that Tang Sire's martial arts of the Xiaoyao sect was taught by Li Qingluo. Only now did he suddenly realize that although they both belonged to the Xiaoyao sect, their martial arts were still significantly different. I'm afraid that my identity as a disciple of the Xiaoyao sect all these years did not escape Master's discerning eyes. Tang Sire's smile became even more bitter. Are you sent by Tianshan Tongra? Li Qingluo's tone was unfriendly. She was the daughter of Li Qiushui, and Li Qiushui and Tianshan Tongra had always been like fire and water. No. Tang Sire shook her head. She naturally knew about the resentment between the two sections. At this critical moment, she did not want to be involved in the resentment between the two sides. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? If I were not from the Spirit Vulture Palace of the Misty Peak, how could I know that old monster's unique skill, the life and death spell? Li Qingluo had been suspicious of Tang Sire's identity for a long time. After secretly investigating, she found that someone had been hit by the life and death spell. After the shock, she remained calm. On the one hand, she wanted to see what Tang Sire wanted to do. On the other hand, she planned to beat Tianshan Tongra at her own game at the critical moment. Just now, Li Qingluo was just trying to scare Tang Sire. She didn't really mean to hurt Tang Sire. She knew that with Tang Sire's intelligence, she would never do anything impulsive. But unexpectedly, Tang Sire was really impulsive and chose to openly resist. It was fine if he resisted, but the wave-like subtle steps that he revealed in an instant made Li Qingluo unable to sit still anymore. She even gave up her previous plan and did not hesitate to lay her cards on the table, but I'm more curious about where you learned wave-like subtle steps from. Originally, it was inevitable that he would unify the world, but it was a pity that the heavens were jealous of his talent. He died of illness at the age of 30, leaving behind an orphan and a widow, allowing the Zhao brothers to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Tang Sire didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at Li Qingluo and said, Master, you're also a member of the Free and Unfettered sect. Do you know who the founder of our sect is? Naturally, it's the unfettered one, Pan Lang. Li Qingluo answered. Pan Lang? Song Qingshu knew this person. He was a famous hermit and scholar in the early years of the northern Song dynasty. His style of writing was similar to Jia Dao and Meng Jiao. Similar to other scholars in the Song dynasty, he also had a nickname, the Unfettered One. Song Qingshu originally thought that he was just a down-and-out scholar, an impetuous hermit. Now that he heard Tang Sire's words, it was both unexpected and reasonable. The Unfettered One, the Free and Unfettered sect, how could there be no relationship between them, Master? Do you know the background of our founder? Tang Sire asked. Li Qingluo shook her head. Our founder was an extremely knowledgeable man with extraordinary martial arts skills. However, he has always been mysterious. The people of Jianghu don't even know much about the Free and Unfettered sect, let alone our founder. Tang Sire said in a sorrowful tone, back then, after the wise martial Emperor Xiaowen passed away, at this moment, Xiaolong knew, who was at the side, suddenly asked, "Who is the wise martial Emperor Xiaowen?" Song Qingshu was also confused. Although he knew more than the average person as a transmigrator, he couldn't remember the complicated posthumous titles of ancient times. Fortunately, there was Li Qingluo, who was from an aristocratic family, next to him. She explained, "The wise martial Emperor Xiaowen is Chai Rong of Zhou Shizong." Tang Sire nodded and continued, "The wise martial Emperor Xiaowen had 7 children. Unfortunately, the first 3 children died in the hands of Lu Qingyu of the later Han dynasty. Therefore, after his death, the oldest of the remaining 4 children was only 7 years old. Not long after, that dog Zhao Kuangyin forced him to abdicate the throne." Chai Zongxuan. Song Qingshu also knew a little about this period of history. Thinking about it made him sigh. Because of this, the Song dynasty had always been on guard against military generals. The national policy of emphasizing culture and belittling martial arts had led to the Song dynasty being weak and being bullied by foreign tribes. That's right. Hatred flashed in Tang Sire's eyes. The remaining 4 sons of the wise martial Emperor Xiaowen were the 4th son, Chai Zongxuan, the 5th son, Chai Shirong, the 6th son, Chai Shijin, and the 7th son, Chai Shihui. After Zhao Kuangyin usurped the throne, he demoted Chai Zongxuan to King Jing. The 5th son, Chai Shirong, was missing in the chaos. The 6th son, Chai Shijin, and the 7th son, Chai Shihui, were unable to escape because they were young. At that time, Zhao Kuangyin had the intention to cut the weeds and eliminate the root. Fortunately, the founding general, Lu Yen, risked his life to dissuade him. At that time, he said, Yao Shun did not abolish Zhu Jun. Today, Zhou Chan will be safe. At this time, General Pan Mei also stepped forward. He said, "How dare I not think so? But it is not right." Only then did he save the lives of the 2 young princes. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. In history, Pan Mei was a famous general and an unyielding man. Unfortunately, he was discredited by the Yang family generals. Pan Mei and Lu Yen each took a young prince home to adopt. Pan Mei took Chai Shijin, and Lu Yen took Chai Shihui. In order to avoid potential danger, the 2 adopted the 2 princes. Chai Shihui changed his surname to Lu and was named Lu Duoshuan. Chai Shijin followed Pan Mei's surname and changed his name to Pan Lang. Tang Sire's tone was calm, but it was as if a heavy bomb had been dropped in the room. Ancestor Xiaoyao is actually a descendant of Chai Rong. Not to mention Song Qingshu, even Li Qingluo, who was a disciple of the Xiaoyao sect, was shocked. After the 2 princes grew up, they were obsessed with revenge and restoring the Zhou dynasty. At that time, Zhao Kuangyin was killed by the candlelight axe shadow. In order to justify it, Zhao Guangyi announced that it was his elder brother's last wish. However, there was a problem. Their 3rd brother, Zhao Tingmei, had the legal right to inherit the throne. The 2 princes felt that it was a great opportunity, so they secretly sought refuge with Zhao Tingmei, the king of Qin. They instigated Zhao Tingmei to fight with Zhao Guangyi so that they could find a chance to restore the Zhou dynasty. Unfortunately, God disposes. In the end, they failed at the last step. Zhao Tingmei was sent to another place and died of fear. Lu Duoshuan was sent to Yazhou while Pan Lang fled to the Jianghu. Song Qingshu was extremely shocked in his heart. He knew a little about that matter all those years ago. Lu Duoshuan had assisted Zhao Tingmei, yet in the end, he'd lost to the joint forces of the old fox, Zhao Guangyi and Zhao Pu. Tang Sire finally calmed down and said, after that failure, the 2 princes realized that Zhao Song's fate was not over yet. So, they decided to hide their strength and bide their time, waiting for the right time. Lu Duoshuan carefully taught his descendants in Yazhou, while Pan Lang secretly established the Xiaoyao sect in the Jianghu and began his grand plan. Note 1. In history, Chai Shijin changed his name to Pan Weiji and Chai Shihui changed his name to Lu Xian. Here, the image of Pan Lang and Lu Duoshuan was grafted onto them. Chapter 1334. A Grand Plan. Song Qingshu thought about the mysteriousness of the Xiaoyao sect. The more he thought about it, the more shocked he was. Tang's sire continued, Pan Lang had 3 disciples in his life. The eldest disciple was at the misty peak of Heaven Mountain. He secretly made arrangements in Jianghu and controlled the power of the 72 caves on the 36th island. Song Qingshu and Li Qingluo looked at each other and immediately understood that the eldest disciple she mentioned was Heaven Mountain Tonglao. The second disciple was placed in the Central Plains. He recruited disciples and waited for the Central Plains to change. Tang's sire looked at Li Qingluo thoughtfully. Humph, that heartless man. Li Qingluo snorted. She obviously had a lot of resentment towards that person. Song Qingshu's expression was strange. He knew that the second disciple was Wu Yizi. He couldn't help but say, between him and your mother, it's hard to say who's wrong. With Li Qiushui's fickle personality, Wu Yizi's head was not just green, but green like a grassland. Li Qingluo held her breath. She obviously knew what he was implying. She couldn't help but say, that man had a change of heart first. If he didn't fall in love with someone else, my mother wouldn't have become like that. I wouldn't have to wander around in Jianghu. Who can say for sure about feelings? Song Qingshu seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but sigh. Li Qingluo laughed coldly and said, that's just the excuse you men use. That heartless man could have liked anyone, but he just had to like. She suddenly realized something and couldn't help but glance at Xiaolongnu beside her. She swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth and said, he just had to like an underage girl. What a pervert, disgusting, Song Qingshu actually wanted to say that he didn't discriminate against all kinds of fetishes. Everyone had their own preferences, but seeing Li Qingluo's cold expression, he wisely didn't say what he really thought. Look at your little cousin. I can roughly guess why he fell so deeply in love with her. Li Qingluo looked at the elegant and refined Xiaolongnu beside her. She had to admit that what he said was very reasonable. Back then, her aunt was also this peerless in her generation. If she was a man, it would be very difficult for her to resist her charm. Xiaolongnu was confused by the two's gazes and couldn't help but ask, why are you looking at me? It's nothing. Song Qingshu smiled. He couldn't tell her that her uncle had fallen in love with her mother. In terms of beauty, figure, and temperament, how is my mother inferior? At the end of the day, you men are just too hateful. You like the new and dislike the old. Over the years, Li Qingluo had captured quite a number of heartless men in the world of wanderers and brought them to Montua Villa to be fertilizer for her flowers. She changed the topic and said, as a true disciple of the Xiaoyao sect, I don't even know about this. How do you know so clearly? Song Qingshu also looked at Tang's sire curiously. At first, he also thought that she was a subordinate of Tianshan Tonglao. But since Li Qingluo, as Li Qiushui's biological daughter, did not know about these things, presumably Tianshan Tonglao's people might not know. Tang's sire paused and looked at the two with a complicated expression. Can I trust you? Song Qingshu asked curiously, what do you mean? Our identities are too important. If you leak what I said today, I'm afraid Wei Rulin and I will be doomed eternally, Tang's sire said. Song Qingshu did not promise her anything. He only said indifferently, now that things have come to this, you have no other choice. That's true. Tang's sire laughed self-deprecatingly. Between the two of you, one is the White Lotus Society's Holy Mother, and the other is a separatist warlord. I'm sure you won't betray me to the Song court. As if saying this to give herself enough confidence, Tang's sire took a deep breath and finally made up her mind. Didn't I just mention that there were 2 princes back then? You already know about Pan Lang, so let me talk about Lu Duoxuan. After Lu Duoxuan was sent to Yazhou, he focused all his attention on teaching his children martial arts and military strategies. After all, he was born into the royal family. At that time, when the great Zhou dynasty had already unified the world, the inner palace had collected many secret martial arts manuals. After the Chenqié mutiny, some subordinates loyal to the Chai family secretly stole the secret martial arts manuals and military books from the imperial palace. This was the source of Pan Lang and Lu Duoxuan's martial arts. Pan Lang founded the Carefree sect, while Lu Duoxuan passed on his martial arts to his descendants. In order to avoid persecution from the Zhao and Song dynasties, his descendants did not dare to restore their surname of Chai. They did not even dare to keep their surname of Lu. They all changed their surnames, and all their children changed their surnames to Fu. This was the surname of Emperor Ruiwu and Empress Fu to warn their descendants not to forget the ancestral teachings. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He could not help but say, "Your real name is Fu Mini. So you're a princess. My apologies." Tang's sire sighed faintly. "I'm just a slave from a conquered country. How can I be called a princess?" After listening to this, the murderous aura that Li Qingluo had accumulated had long disappeared. "That Wei Rulin is also, that's right." Tang's sire nodded. "His real name is Fu Rulin, and he's my younger brother. Our bloodline has withered, and now only the two of us are left. If anything happens to him, everyone's efforts over the past 100 years will be in vain. So, I beg you, you must let him go." As she spoke, she knelt down in front of Song Qingshu and looked at him with tears in her eyes. Song Qingshu did not express his opinion. His mind was racing, and he began to consider the pros and cons of this. Previously, he spared Wei Rulin's life in the beggar sect because he fancied his identity as the Zhuangyuan scholar. He thought that he might be able to do something in the imperial court in the future. However, he did not expect that Wei Rulin was a descendant of the royal family. Unlike Murong Fu, who was a member of the royal family from 8 lifetimes ago, Wei Rulin was a legitimate member of the royal family from the previous dynasty. Now, many people in the Great Song dynasty sympathized with the Chai family. Coupled with the humiliation of Jinkong, many people in the southern Song dynasty had begun to have ideas. A rare commodity worth hoarding. Song Qingshu thought of Lu Buwei. However, he did not dare to be careless. Although the national policy of the Song dynasty had always been weak against external enemies, it was extremely strong in suppressing internal enemies. If Wei Rulin's identity was exposed, it was very likely that he would get into trouble and would have to face the thunderous attack of the southern Song dynasty. While Song Qingshu was weighing the pros and cons, Li Qingluo's attitude made a 180-degree change. Previously, she thought that Tang's sire was a spy sent by the Heavenly Mountain Maiden, which was why she wanted to kill her. Now that she knew that she was not, the feelings of a teacher and a disciple of the past gradually surged up in her heart. Moreover, when she thought of the brother and sister's unswerving determination to complete the ancestors' last wish, she thought of how she had to endure all these years in order to avenge her aunt. Li Qingluo could not help but empathize with her. She touched her hair with pity and turned to Song Qingshu and said, "The one with the surname Song, there is no fundamental hatred between the two of you. Moreover, to a certain extent, your interests are still the same. Why don't you let the brother and sister go?" "Thank you, master." Tang's sire did not expect that Li Qingluo would actually plead for her. She could not help but look at her gratefully. Then she stared at Song Qingshu anxiously, afraid that he would say no. "As long as you let my brother go, I am willing to agree to any condition." Song Qingshu smiled slightly. "Well, then give me your most precious thing." "Shameless!" Li Qingluo's phoenix eyes were filled with anger. She glared at him, but unfortunately, he did not seem to see her expression. Xiaolong Nu, who was at the side, also frowned slightly. However, she had always been cold and did not say anything in the end. Tang's sire's pretty face was as red as rouge. She bit her lips and said awkwardly, "Here?" She shouldered the mission of her ancestors, not to mention that Wei Rulin was the only male in the Chai clan. If anything were to happen to her, the Chai clan's lineage would be cut off. Compared to this, her personal honor and disgrace were nothing. Chapter 1335. Song, don't you have any shame? Before Tang Sire could answer, Li Qingluo suddenly became furious. As long as I'm here, I won't watch you bully my disciple. Tang Sire looked at her in surprise. Seeing that she was so protective of her, she was touched and couldn't help but sob. Master, Song Qingshu laughed. You two obviously have your own ulterior motives, but now you're pretending to be a master and disciple in front of me. Isn't it too much? Li Qingluo's face turned red. Obviously, he had poked her sore spot. I don't care. Anyway, I can't sit by and watch you use such a despicable method to take advantage of others. How did I take advantage of others? Song Qingshu pointed at Tang Sire. If you don't believe me, you can ask her yourself. Under such circumstances, I'm willing to make a deal with her. Is she willing or not? Tang Sire bit her lips and looked at Li Qingluo apologetically. Master, I'm willing. Li Qingluo was almost angered to death. She thought to herself, you're usually quite smart. Why are you so stupid to ruin my show today? I'm obviously helping you. After getting Tang Sire's answer, Song Qingshu looked at Li Qingluo with a faint smile. Madam is so angry. Could it be that you're jealous? I'm jealous? Li Qingluo almost jumped up, feeling a little embarrassed into anger. Forget it. Since she's willing to be bullied by you, I'm too lazy to care. After saying that, she turned around and left. Cousin, Xiaolong Nu exclaimed. The two of them had agreed that Li Qingluo would talk to her about her father and mother when they went to bed at night. How could she let her leave like this? She hurriedly chased after her. Soon, there were only two people left in the room. Song Qingshu spread out his hands. Can you give it to me now? Tang Sire's face turned red, and at the same time, a trace of anger flashed in the depths of her eyes. But now, she had no other choice but to look up at him. They may come back at any time. Are you sure you want me to give it to you now? It doesn't matter. I don't have any other strong points, but I can guarantee that I can get it done quickly. Song Qingshu patted his chest and promised. It'll be done soon. There was a hint of contempt in Tang Sire's eyes, but she didn't say anything. She got up and closed the door. Why did you close the door? Song Qingshu was startled. Tang Sire rolled her eyes at him in annoyance, thinking, You're quite good at pretending. No matter what, I'm also of royal blood and have a sense of shame. How can I do this kind of thing with my door wide open? Forget it. Let's hurry up. Song Qingshu finally understood that the other party was afraid of eavesdropping. This person is really... At this moment, Tang Sire even suspected that the man in front of her was an impostor. It should be known that in the pugilistic world, Song Qingshu was handsome and elegant, and he was the lover that countless women dreamed of. But now, his table manners were a little too ugly. What was the difference between this lustful look and those big-bellied officials? As a member of the White Lotus Society, Tang Sire had dealt with many people from all walks of life. There were many spies in the society in the brothels, and over the years, Tang Sire had seen many men's ugly behavior. Even though her impression of Song Qingshu had dropped to the freezing point, Tang Sire still knew that she was at the mercy of others. She sighed faintly and clenched her fists tightly in her sleeves. She secretly said in her heart, Everything is for the family. Seeing the woman in front of him suddenly reveal a trace of holy light on her charming face, and when she started to untie the ribbon around her waist to take off her clothes, Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. What are you doing? Even now, you still want to humiliate me? Tang Sire's face flushed, and she took a deep breath to calm the anger in her heart. She replied calmly, Didn't you want my most precious thing? I'll give it to you now. Song Qingshu only then realized that his words just now had a huge ambiguity. Although he didn't mind taking the opportunity to admire Tang Sire's beautiful body, it was too unstylish to do so. I didn't mean that. Tang's sire stopped what she was doing and asked subconsciously, then what do you mean? The so-called most precious thing of yours is the martial arts passed down in your family, such as the life-death talisman, wave-like subtle steps, and so on. It's not that. Song Qingshu laughed awkwardly. Tang's sire's face instantly turned red, and she stared at him with her almond-shaped eyes. You mean my body is not as precious as those martial arts? I have many female friends around me, and we don't have any feelings for each other. Why would I want your body? Seeing that the woman's face was getting uglier, Song Qingshu wisely shut his mouth. You're going too far. Tang's sire was born beautiful, and as the White Lotus School's holy maiden, all the men in the pugilistic world were infatuated with her every frown and smile. No one was like this person in front of her, who took the initiative to throw herself at him and actually rejected her. Song Qingshu shrugged. Miss Fu, I don't want to continue arguing with you about this. You'd better hand over those martial arts quickly. No. These are all secret. How can I be the sinner of my family? Tang's sire still couldn't calm down when she thought about it. Song Qingshu sighed. If you cause your family to lose its lineage, you'll really be the sinner of your family. Tang's sire finally calmed down from her anger, and after thinking about the pros and cons, she had to admit that he was right. What do you want to learn? Ignoring the dissatisfaction in her tone, Song Qingshu smiled and said, Of course, I want to learn all of them. Objectively speaking, with his current cultivation base, the carefree sex martial arts could not improve him much. However, there were many mysterious aspects in the carefree sex martial arts that could be used for reference, such as the wave-like subtle steps to dodge, the life and death talisman to control people, and the northern underworld divine power which could turn a person who didn't know martial arts into a martial arts expert in a short period of time. All of these would be of great help to him when he fought for hegemony in the world in the future. What? Tang's sire was shocked and angry. That's impossible. She originally thought that the ancestors wouldn't blame her if she revealed 1 or 2 martial arts in order to save her brother. However, if she revealed all of her martial arts, even if she successfully rescued her brother, she would still be the sinner of her family for eternity. Why is it impossible? Song Qingshu glanced at her faintly. Since you can find me, you obviously know what your brother has done. If it's not enough repayment, how can I spare his life? Tang's sire's expression changed. Previously, she had learned from Shi Shangyun what had happened. When she found out that her precious brother had been captured by Song Qingshu, she was instantly infuriated and hurriedly rushed over to rescue him. Unfortunately, the gap between them was too great, and it was impossible to rescue him by force. After a fierce mental struggle, Tang's sire took a deep breath. I can only teach you 3 martial arts at most. This is already the limit. Even if our bloodline is cut off, there is still Pan Lang's bloodline to inherit the ancestors' will. I can't let my brother and I become sinners of the Chai family. 3 then, but I have to choose which 3. Song Qingshu said. Tang's sire hesitated for a moment and nodded. Okay. She thought that the martial arts of the Xiaoyao sect were extensive and profound, and at the same time, extremely mysterious. Even many people in the sect didn't know what kind of martial arts they had. As an outsider, the 3 martial arts that he knew were definitely not the most profound in the sect. The first one, Life and Death Note. Song Qingshu said without hesitation. He had been using the 3-corpse brain elixir and the leopard embryo muscle changing pill to control some people before, but who knew if these strange poisons would have any unknown side effect. If he wanted to control people like Zhao Min in the future, the Life and Death Note would be more harmless. No problem. Tang's sire also guessed that he would choose this way. Originally, the Life and Death Note had a very high position in the martial arts system of the Xiaoyao sect, and it belonged to the kind of martial arts that should never be taught to outsiders. However, last time in the Jin Kingdom, it was actually solved by an outsider, which suddenly made this martial art fall from the altar. She even doubted it, so she didn't feel so bad about teaching this martial art. Song Qingshu was very satisfied with her straightforwardness and continued to say, "The second one, wave-like subtle steps." With his current lightness skill, he could dash in a straight line without leaving a trace. The lightness skill of the Taishan Sutra could ignore gravity, but it was not very good for dodging and moving in a small range. The 1 foot away yet horizon was similar to space teleportation. Although it was powerful, it consumed too much energy, so it couldn't be used as a regular weapon. Usually, he used the snake form Flipping Fox in the 9-in Sutra to move around. Although the dodging effect was excellent, the posture of rolling on the ground was too ugly. According to the saying of playing basketball in the school in his previous life, it didn't matter whether you made it or not, but the posture of shooting must be handsome. With Song Qingshu's current identity, it would really damage his image if he used the snake form Flipping Fox. But the wave-like subtle steps was simply a weapon to show off. Once he used it casually, he would be like a harvester. Ahem, his charm was through the sky. Okay. Tang Sire still agreed readily. She had just used it to dodge Li Qingluo's attack, so she was not surprised that Song Qingshu brought it up. Song Qingshu nodded. The last one, the Northern Underworld Divine Power. With his current martial arts, the Northern Underworld Divine Power was of no use to him at all. After all, it was impossible for him to waste all his internal force to practice the Northern Underworld Divine Power. But this method was the best tool to cultivate masters quickly. In the original work, even a weak person like Duan Yu only practiced 1 meridian of the Northern Underworld Divine Power. He absorbed a lot of internal force in Jianghu and accumulated a world-shaking internal force in a short time. If he used it to train his subordinates, he could train a large number of people to fight in a short time. Or he could teach it to some cute girls around him so that they could protect themselves when they were in danger. Although Song Qingshu had the secret manual of Absorbing Stars Great Technique before, Absorbing Stars Great Technique was only the beggar version of Dark North Divine Art. There were a lot of fatal bugs, so it was naturally not as useful as the original Dark North Divine Art. Tang Sire, who had agreed readily the first 2 times, frowned this time. "I don't know this method." "You don't?" Song Qingshu was stunned. "The martial arts of the Xiaoyao sect are broad and profound. We can't practice all the methods. We can only choose the one that suits us," Tang Sire explained. "Then what internal force do you practice?" Song Qingshu asked curiously. "The 8 Wilderness Method, the Supremacy Method." Tang Sire opened her red lips slightly. "It is also called the Eternal Youth Method." After sending Xiao Long Nu away, Song Qingshu laughed in his heart. When did Li Qingluo become so polite and reasonable? It was obvious that she sent Xiao Long Nu to spy on the military situation. Fortunately, I didn't do anything to her disciple. Otherwise, wouldn't she immediately come to kill me with a knife? Then Tang Sire recited the chant of the Eternal Youth Art. She was secretly disdainful and thought, "You pretended to know but didn't take a pen to record it. Even if you can't forget it now, I don't believe that you will remember it tomorrow." She even played a little trick and changed a few of the incantations along the way, thinking that he wouldn't know if they were real or fake anyway. However, who knew that Song Qingshu would quickly raise an objection to some of the incantations and asked if she had remembered them wrongly. She was so scared that she didn't dare to have any more thoughts. "I heard that when one's martial arts reached a certain level, he could automatically complete the technique through deduction. I didn't expect it to be true." Tang Sire secretly clicked her tongue. Then she honestly told him the rest of the chant. After reciting the chant of the wave-like subtle steps, Song Qingshu instantly turned into a green smoke and moved in the room. Tang Sire was already numb to it. They were both using the wave-like subtle steps, but why was it so much more powerful than her? Song Qingshu performed it and had to admire the power of the founder of the wave-like subtle step. Based on the 64 hexagrams of the Book of Changes, he actually developed such an exquisite footwork. Moreover, as the internal force increased, the wave-like subtle steps became more powerful. Every step of the wave-like subtle steps was closely related to the internal force. It was definitely not just walking. If someone without the foundation of internal force forced to walk the wave-like subtle steps, it would cause the danger of destroying his meridians. Let's start talking about the life and death note. After comprehending the essence of the wave-like subtle steps, Song Qingshu focused on the last martial art. If you want to learn how to make the life and death note, you must first learn how to solve the life and death note. Tang Sire paused and continued. You already knew how to solve the life and death note in the last confrontation with the Jin Kingdom, so it will be easier for you to learn it. About 1.5 hours later, Song Qingshu opened his eyes and reached out to the wine glass next to him. A stream of wine was instantly sucked into his hand. As the Yin Tru Qi turned, the wine turned into several thin pieces of ice as thin as cicadas' wings. Then he raised his hand casually, and those thin pieces of ice were instantly inserted into several acupoints on Tang Sire's body. Tang Sire exclaimed. Before she could express her anger, a strange itch spread all over her body from those acupoints. She curled up in pain and tried to scratch the itch with her hand. However, her wrist had already been grasped by Song Qingshu. Tang Sire felt so itchy that she was about to collapse, and her hand was grasped by him. She couldn't help but curse, Song Qingshu, you bastard, let me go. If I let you scratch, your clothes will be disheveled and your skin will be torn. Are you sure you want me to let you go? Song Qingshu said with a faint smile. Let me go. Tang Sire didn't care so much at this time. She rubbed herself desperately in his arms, trying to use some of the friction of her body to relieve her itch. Song Qingshu didn't expect that a girl would do this. Feeling her hot and trembling body twisting in his arms, a heat rose in his lower abdomen instantly. Don't move. I'll undo it for you. Song Qingshu hurriedly suppressed his desire and quickly hit several acupoints on her body. Then he moved his palm on her body and used Tru Qi to dissolve the life and death notes for her. After the symptoms were relieved, Tang Sire gradually calmed down. After the torment just now, her clothes had already been soaked in sweat. Now, the thin clothes could not block the sweat at all. She could clearly feel the temperature of the other party's palm. Presumably, the other party could also feel the tenderness of her skin. Realizing that her mood was a little wrong at this time, Tang Sire hurriedly calmed down and changed the topic. Why did you do this to me? You lied to me with fake incantations at the beginning. I can deduce the internal strength, but I can only know if the life and death notes are real or not after I try them myself. Song Qingshu answered. Tang Sire was speechless for a moment. It turned out that he had already seen through her mind. I'm good to you, right? I'll undo the life and death notes for you soon. Song Qingshu also felt that he had tortured her enough and felt a little sorry. Feeling his hand moving all over her body, Tang Sire bit her lip and said mysteriously, Who knows if you want to take the opportunity to touch me? Song Qingshu almost fell to the ground. He said angrily, If I want to touch you, I will do it openly. Why do I have to use these dirty tricks? Tang Sire stuck out her tongue. In fact, she also knew that he was not that kind of person. After all, he refused her when she took off her clothes. However, the pain of the life and death notes was so shocking that she couldn't help but want to vent her anger. That was why she said that to him. I've dissolved the life and death notes in your body. Song Qingshu exhaled slightly and stopped cultivating. Then, he helped her up. Thank you. Tang Sire regretted her words as soon as she said it. He was the one who planted the life and death notes on her. Why did she thank him? While tidying up her clothes, she changed the topic to ease her embarrassment. I've fulfilled my promise. Now it's time for you to let my brother go. Don't worry. I'll let your brother go. However, he was hit by the phantom finger and needs time to heal. When he recovers, you can see him. Song Qinshu answered. Tang Sire looked at him deeply and said, This is different from our agreement. It's not different. Song Qinshu said lightly, Your brother will be fine. Well, if I find out that you lied to me, I'll take revenge on you by hook or by crook. Tang Sire glared at him fiercely before she left. Watching her figure disappear into the night sky, Song Qinshu shrugged. Even without this deal, he had to protect Wei Ruolan's life. After all, with his identity, he had a lot of room to play. Of course, it would be better if there was a deal. He did not know that Tang Sire was so stupid. Shi Shangyun had already made a deal with him once, but she came to him again for free. He did not know if Shi Shangyun had any other female confidants or sisters. He would not refuse any of them. I wonder if they're asleep. Song Qinshu looked at the sky and found that it was late at night. Let's go and see. Song Qinshu felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. He hesitated for a moment and finally walked to the room where Xiaolong Nu and Wei Ruolan were. It was not very honorable to go to a woman's room in the middle of the night. Therefore, Song Qinshu deliberately hid his traces when he went there. With his current cultivation, he was not worried that they would find him. If they're asleep, I'll come back. If they're not, I'll go in and talk. Song Qinshu kept talking to himself, as if he was trying to hide his guilty conscience. Hey, the lights are all out. Song Qinshu sighed inwardly as he came to the window. Should I take a look? As soon as this idea came into his mind, it became impossible to suppress. Song Qinshu rubbed his hands and looked hesitant. Suddenly, he felt something and turned to look at the other side. He saw Li Qingluo coming out from the corner of the wall with a faint smile. The dignified Golden Snake King came to peep at a woman's bedroom in the middle of the night. Aren't you afraid that your reputation will be ruined if it gets out? Chapter 1337. Hey, what are you doing? Li Qingluo was both embarrassed and angry. She didn't expect him to hold her hand without saying a word. At the same time, she was worried that he would wake up Xiaolong Nu inside, so she could only lower her voice and ask, You. Song Qinshu's breathing quickened. Previously, he was troubled by Shi Shangyun in the beggar clan. He finally managed to use his great willpower to be a Luxiawi. Who knew that he would be provoked by Tang Sire when he came back? Even now, the image of her body's amazing elasticity kept appearing in his mind. Now that he saw Li Qingluo appear in front of him in such an enchanting manner, how could he hold himself back? Li Qingluo was stunned at first. She felt that the other party did not answer her question. However, she was an extremely intelligent person and quickly understood the meaning of the other party's answer. In an instant, her cheeks blushed and her red lips opened, but in the end, she did not say anything. She had originally come here to denounce him. After all, Song Qinshu had done such a thing to her last time. She had to settle the score with him. Unfortunately, she had first brought Xiaolong Nu to visit her parents' old home. Now that she finally had some free time, she was thinking about how to make things difficult for Song Qinshu, who knew that the other party would not play by the rules and caught her unprepared. Reason told Li Qingluo that she should resolutely shake off the other party's hand. She could even give him a slap. However, the heat from the other party's palm made her feel as if a flame had been ignited in her body. Her heart was beating faster and faster. Even without using her hands, she could feel her cheeks getting hotter and hotter. Seeing the other party lead her into the house, Li Qingluo was secretly shocked. She warned herself, this won't do. I have to make things clear with him. Just as she was about to open her red lips, Song Qinshu's dry and hot lips were like a ball of fire blocking her mouth, blocking all the words she wanted to say. Li Qingluo was a mature woman after all. She had a hint of a young woman's charm and lacked the innocence of a young girl. Now that things had come to this, she gave up talking. Her two jade arms subconsciously hugged the man in front of her. After that, neither of them said a word. There was only heavy breathing, tight hugs that wanted to rub each other into their own bodies, the most passionate kisses, and the most primitive exploration. Don't tear my clothes. I'll do it myself. In the end, Li Qingluo couldn't help but speak up. After all, this wasn't her home, and she didn't bring a change of clothes with her. If her clothes were torn to shreds, could she go and borrow clothes from her cousin, Xiaolong Nu? She couldn't afford to lose face like this. Watching Li Qingluo unbutton her clothes, Song Qingshu couldn't help but admire that mature women were indeed different from young and inexperienced girls. They could face their body's desires and bravely express their passion. However, Song Qingshu was still not satisfied with Li Qingluo's speed because of Shi Shangyun and Tang Sai. He simply carried her to the table and used his other hand to sweep the things on the table to the ground. The crisp sound of bowls and plates falling to the ground alerted the servants in the residence. They exclaimed and rushed over, "Young master, what happened?" As soon as they stepped through the door, they were shocked to find a girl who looked like a weak scholar. She never dared to go against the rules in this aspect, and the two had always treated each other with respect. Therefore, Song Qingshu's request made her nervous and excited at the same time. Biting her lips, Li Qingluo's phoenix eyes revealed a hint of flirtatiousness. She dispelled the thought of refusing and opened her body and mind to welcome the man on top of her. The next day, when they were eating breakfast together, Xiaolong Nu looked at Li Qingluo strangely. "Cousin, your face seems to be much rosier than yesterday? Really?" Li Qingluo touched her face and glanced at Song Qingshu guiltily. Song Qingshu smiled at her, causing her to turn her face away in an extremely unnatural manner. Actually, both Song Qingshu and Li Qingluo knew very well that there was no love between them. There was only some instinctive attraction between them. For Li Qingluo, her husband died early, and it was difficult to say that there was any feelings between them. All these years, she had been carrying a huge responsibility and pressure to avenge her aunt and uncle. In front of the White Lotus Society's Holy Mother, who was wanted by the Southern Song dynasty, she was extremely nervous both physically and mentally. She needed to relax to release these suppressed negative emotions. Moreover, she was originally an extremely mature woman, and at this age, she also greatly desired the love of a man. Of course, because of the social environment and the moral system, she did not have these thoughts at the beginning. She continued to be the chaste wife of a prince until Song Qingshu opened the door to another world for her. That experience, which she had never experienced before, made her yearn for more. For Song Qingshu, Li Qingluo was mature and beautiful. She was an extremely charming woman. Coupled with her special identity, his desire to conquer her was satisfied. Especially since she was already extremely mature and skilled in martial arts. He did not have to worry about their bodies being damaged like he did with other women. He could completely unleash his most primitive desire on Li Qingluo. Wuji was not afraid of releasing his most primitive desire on Li Qingluo's body. Therefore, the two of them hit it off. Moreover, both of them were mature people. They tacitly did not talk about their relationship. After they were done, it was as if nothing had happened. There was no responsibility or moral restraint, which made the two of them quite satisfied and relaxed. In the next few days, Li Qingluo continued to bring Xiaolong Nu to learn about her parent. Song Qingshu went to the beggar gang from time to time and began to familiarize himself with the organizational structure of the beggar gang. He began to understand the ability and character of each middle-level leader, who could be used by him, and who must be replaced in the future. Besides, after getting along with Chen Yuliang for a period of time, he had to admit that Chen Yuliang was a talent. He was a great talent. The only pity was that his character was questionable. However, Song Qingshu was not very worried about this right now. Although Chen Yuliang was a double-edged sword, with his current abilities and the precautions he had taken in advance, he had absolute confidence that he would not suffer any backlash when using him. After Chen Youliang's arrangement and operation during this period, the whole streets and alleys of Lin and were discussing the injustice of Yu Fei's murder. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation when mentioning the treacherous officials who murdered Yu Fei. The common people were stirred up, and the discussion about this matter in the imperial court was gradually fermenting. In particular, the students of Jianshan Academy were originally at the age of youth. With Li Shouzhong adding fuel to the fire in the dark, they were simply like an angry volcano. It was unknown how many times they spontaneously organized to write petitions to the emperor. But Ma Qifeng and Zhang Jun had been the left and right ministers for so many years, and had accumulated a lot of power. Every time, there would be subordinates who would help them resolve these threats. But the greater the pressure, the stronger the resistance. Later, something happened that finally completely ignited the powder keg. The right minister of the imperial household, Zhang Bolin, wrote on the wall of Zichen Palace where the imperial court was held, "Fu Chai, have you forgotten that your father was killed by the king of Yu?" The imperial court was instantly in an uproar. At that time, Emperor Huizong had already died in the Jin kingdom, so everyone understood that these words were meant to mock Zhao Go. It could be said that Yu Fei's death had caused the dissatisfaction and resistance in the hearts of the common people to accumulate to a dangerous level. Zhao Go dealt with Zhang Bolin with an ashen face. At the same time, he understood that if he did not vindicate Yu Fei, it would be difficult to win over the people's hearts. Especially now that people were no longer attacking Qin Hui, Ma Qifeng, and the other officials like before. Instead, they were gradually turning the spearhead towards him. If he was not careful, he would bring trouble to himself, and it might even cause chaos. Now that things had come to this, he could only make a prompt decision and abandon the rook to save the king. Anyway, Qin Hui was already dead, and the actions of the other two main culprits, Ma Qifeng and Zhang Jun, were too disappointing. Zhao Go looked at the left and right ministers below the court. His heart was already cold. Shi Miyuan's father, Shi Hao, was the teacher of the emperor. Naturally, he quickly sensed Zhao Go's thoughts. Previously, no matter how his daughter, Shi Shangyun, persuaded him, he did not make a move. In the end, once he made a move, it was like a thunderbolt. The imperial court, the palace court, and the imperial censorate all acted at the same time and directly accused left minister Ma Qifeng and right minister Zhang Jun of plotting a rebellion. As an old fox in the political arena, Shi Miyuan did not immediately accuse the two of framing a loyal person. After all, the matter back then had the approval of the emperor. If he was not careful, he might implicate Zhao Go. The crime of plotting a rebellion was the most serious crime in history. Once convicted, the punishment would be the execution of 9 generations. At that time, if he added the crime of framing a loyal person, no one would have any objections. And the accusation of the two of them plotting a rebellion was not made up out of nothing. At that time, the matter of Ma Qifeng instructing Zhang Jun to secretly mobilize 500 imperial guards to surround and kill the Mongolian diplomatic mission had already been discovered by Shi Miyuan. He had been keeping it in his hands, waiting for this opportunity to strike and kill. Although the Song dynasty was weak in history, the people of the Song dynasty never lacked for courageous people. Before the city of Xiangyang was breached, the farmers Zhang Shun and Zhang Gui made a suicidal charge, and the subjects jumped off the cliff and into the sea. Chapter 1338. As the saying goes, everyone kicks a wall when it is down. In addition, Ma Qi-ku and Zhang Jun had done many unjust things and had long offended a large number of people. Now that they had the chance, they swarmed over like sharks that smelled blood. Very quickly, the voices of the two were drowned out. Feeling the crowd's agitation, Zhao Go was frightened. Worried that he would be dragged into this, he immediately summoned the guards in the imperial court to throw the two into prison. The system of remonstrance, the students of the imperial college, and the citizens all listed the crimes of the two. Even the matter of Machiko hiring a killer to kill her daughter-in-law was dug up. There was no suspense about the two's ending. The only surprise was that the two committed suicide in the prison. When Song Qingshu heard the news, he laughed coldly. It was obvious that the person in the palace did not want them to live, to prevent them from saying things that they should not. After dealing with Machi Ku and Zhang Jun, Yu Fei's rehabilitation was completed. The imperial court quickly announced to the world, Yu Fei started his career in the army, and within a few years, he became a general. He was loyal in matters, had the ability to command people, and did not boast. His legacy is still remembered today. Last winter, when he went out to defend Yizhou, his troops were not disturbed, and his movements were disciplined. The credit goes to Yu Fei. Although Yu Fei passed away, the emperor did not forget him. Today, in accordance with the emperor's will, he will be restored to his official position, with the title of Wumu and the posthumous title of Prince of Yi. His funeral will be changed, and he will be hired. Because Yu Fei's body had mysteriously disappeared after he was murdered, there was no way to bury him. The imperial court had no choice but to issue a reward. Anyone with clues to Yu Fei's body would be rewarded with 500 strings of silver. Originally, this was a helpless move. After all, Yu Fei had been murdered for so many years, the hope of finding his body was very small. The imperial court had already prepared to build a cenotaph for him. Unexpectedly, on the day the imperial edict was issued, a young man came to the imperial court and claimed that he knew where Yu Fei's body was. Looking at his age, the imperial court thought that he was here to swindle the reward. After asking, the entire imperial court was shocked. It turned out that he was the son of Kuei Shun, and Kuei Shun just happened to be a prison guard in the Supreme Court where Yu Fei was imprisoned. Although Kuei Shun's status was low and he was uncultured, he was loyal and had always admired Yu Fei. He knew that Yu Fei was framed. Unfortunately, even the Supreme Court officials Li Ruopu and He Yenyu who spoke up for Yu Fei were immediately dismissed and framed. What could a mere prison guard like him do? Especially when he thought of his parents, wife, and children, he could only do his best to take care of Yu Fei in prison, so that he would suffer less. When Yu Fei was murdered, he wrote in prison, "The sun is bright, the sun is bright." Kuei Shun's blood rushed to his head when he saw this. Risking his life, he carried the body out of the city that very night and secretly buried it next to the Juku Tsong temple. In order to identify Yu Fei in the future, Kuei Shun also tied Yu Fei's jade bracelet to his waist and planted 2 orange trees in front of the grave. When Yu Fei's body disappeared, Qin Hui and Wan Qifeng were furious and ordered a thorough investigation. However, many prison guards of the Supreme Court were loyal, and although some guessed that it was Kuei Shun's doing, no one reported it. Kuei Shun buried this secret in his heart until his death. He told his son about it and said, "Marshal Yu is loyal to the country. In the future, there will be a day when he will be cleared of all injustice." His son carried on his father's dying wish and kept this secret. It was only when Qin Hui fell from power, Wan Qifeng, Zhang Jun, and the other main culprits were dead and the imperial court issued a public order to rehabilitate Yu Fei did he report this matter. When Yu Fei's body was moved from the Juku Tsong temple to the Qixia Ridge by the West Lake, Li Qingluo burst into tears. Xiao Long Nu vomited a mouthful of blood and fainted. If Song Qingshu had not quickly held her in his arms, her beautiful and refined face would have been intimately touched by the sand and stones on the ground. The ancient tomb sect's Jade Maiden Heart Sutra requires the practitioner to abandon the 7 emotions and 6 desires. It's too inhumane. If one's emotions fluctuate slightly, one's zhenqi will either reverse or vomit blood. She really can't practice it anymore. It just so happens that the everlasting youth art that I extorted from Tang Sire is very suitable for her. I'll teach it to her when she wakes up. Song Qingshu secretly made up his mind. Originally, he wanted to take Xiao Long Nu home to rest. However, he thought that if she was awake, she might not be willing to leave. Therefore, Song Qingshu held Xiao Long Nu in his arms throughout the entire Yu Fei's burial ceremony. Finally, when he saw the words, King Song Yu's tomb, on the stone tablet, Song Qingshu's heart was in turmoil. He secretly said to Yu Fei, Lord Yu, I will definitely take good care of your daughter and your undying wish of returning my country. However, it's not returning my country to the Zhao and Song families, but to the millions of Chinese people. When they returned home, Xiao Long Nu finally woke up. Hearing that Song Qingshu had witnessed the whole process of her father's burial ceremony with his arms around her, her heart warmed. She said softly, Thank you. Li Qingluo, who was standing by the side, saw that half of her body was leaning on Song Qingshu's arms, but she did not show any shyness or anger. It seemed that she was used to this kind of hugging. Li Qingluo frowned slightly and could not help but worry. It was not because she was jealous. After all, the relationship between her and Song Qingshu did not involve love. It was completely a physical need between a mature man and a woman. She was worried because she knew that a playboy like Song Qingshu was not a good match for her cousin. Especially with the group of women in the Golden Snake Camp, if her cousin really fell in love with him, she might not be happy in this life. After comforting Xiao Long Nu with a few words, Song Qingshu suddenly thought of a previous idea. He immediately said, Don't practice the Jade Girl's Heart Sutra anymore. I will teach you another martial art. Whether in terms of power or subtlety, it is above the Jade Girl's Heart Sutra. But this martial art is the result of ancestor grandma's hard work. Back then, Master didn't even teach senior sister, but passed it on to me. How can I let her down? Xiao Long Nu actually had another reason that she did not say. Subconsciously, she did not want to give up on this martial art that she practiced with Guo. This martial art carried too many memories of the two of them. In fact, according to her usual personality, she would say whatever was on her mind. But this time, she didn't know why, but when she saw Song Qingshu's concerned expression, she subconsciously didn't want to mention another man in front of him. Is this what Auntie Guo talked about in the past? Xiao Long Nu's heart was in a trance for a moment. But the Jade Girl's Heart Sutra has too many flaws. Once you get emotional, something bad will happen. Over the years, how many times have you been in danger? If it wasn't for me secretly guiding your qi, I'm afraid you would have gone mad again. What if I wasn't by your side? I don't want you to go mad alone and meet Gong Sunji. If he saved you, you would marry him to repay him. Song Qingshu said impatiently. Hearing him mention this, Xiao Long Nu's face turned slightly red. She mumbled, That wasn't to repay him. Okay, let's not argue about this anymore. Song Qingshu's tone was unquestionable. From today onwards, you will practice the art of eternal youth. Also, I will teach you the bone forging section of the 9-yin manual. When you cultivate your qi, you will get twice the results with half the effort. Xiao Long Nu nodded slightly and answered. Song Qingshu's generosity made Li Qingluo a little jealous. It was one thing for Xiao Long Nu to not know how powerful these two martial arts were, but as the White Lotus cult mother, she naturally knew how powerful these two martial arts were. One of them caused the 5 greats of the Central Plains to fight against each other, while the other was the Heavenly Mountain Maiden's ultimate technique that killed without a second move. And yet, he just casually gave it to a girl who was not related to him. This bastard sure is willing to pay a lot to pick up a girl, Li Qingluo secretly spat. She really did not want to see her cousin continue to lie in Song Qingshu's embrace. Li Qingluo coughed and took the opportunity to pull her over. She said, Right now, the imperial court is searching for youngest uncle's descendants. I don't know if they can find your brothers. After the matter of moving the burial was completed, the most important thing was to search for Yu Fei's descendants as mentioned in the imperial edict. Naturally, there was no need to search for Xiao Long Nu. She looked almost exactly the same as her mother back then. Anyone could tell that she was Yu Fei's daughter. However, she was a girl, so the special employment mentioned in the imperial edict did not apply to her. My brothers! Xiaolong Nu blinked her large, limpid eyes. As expected, her attention was instantly diverted. Previously, I was afraid that you would be sad, so I didn't mention this matter. Li Qingluo sighed and began to explain. Your father had 5 sons and 2 daughters. The eldest son Yu Yun, the second son Yu Lei, the third son Yu Lin, the fourth son Yu Zhen, the fifth son Yu Ting, and the eldest daughter Yu En's mother were all born by your father's ex-wife. You, the youngest daughter, were born by my youngest aunt. Song Qinshu had a strange expression on his face. When Yu Fei was killed, he was only in his 30s, but he actually had so many children. The people of this era were really efficient in this aspect. It seemed that it was time for him to consider the issue of having children. Otherwise, with so many women around me without a single child, not only would my confidants have wild thoughts, but my subordinates would also feel uneasy. Li Qingluo didn't know that his mind had wandered so far away. She continued to explain. Yu Yun and his subordinate Zhang Xian were sent to the Supreme Court's prison along with your father. Yu Lei was exiled to Lingnan. Yu An's mother was not investigated because she was married. Yu Lin, Yu Zhen, and Yu Ting were still young at that time. They were raised in their old home in Zhejiang and didn't follow their parents to Linen. That night they escaped the calamity. However, considering that Yu Lei was killed by an assassin in the exiled land, the other 3 must have met with misfortune. I have been investigating openly and secretly all these years, but I couldn't find any news about them. Li Qingluo bit her lips, her eyes revealing a deep-seated hatred. Ma Chi-chun and Zhang Jun, those 2 bastards, died too lightly. Song Qinshu was about to comfort the 2 women when suddenly a servant girl ran in and reported, "Young master, there is a lady outside who wants to see you." Xiaolong Nu's ears moved slightly, but she still remained expressionless. "Is it Miss Shi?" Song Qinshu asked. Since Shi Miuan had already initiated the remonstrance, it was about time for Shi Shangyun to come and find him. "It's not Miss Shi." The servant girl shook her head. Shi Shangyun had a great reputation among the young ladies in Lin An City. This servant girl had seen her before. Then who is it? Song Qinshu couldn't help but be startled. Li Qingluo was already in a bad mood. When she heard this, it added fuel to the fire. She spoke rudely. "It must be another one of your womanizing debts. In history, Yu Lin, Yu Zhen, and Yu Ting were all born by Yu Fei's second wife, Li Hua. This place felt that Li Songhai's image as a fairy sister would be damaged if she had too many children, so it was changed." Chapter 1339. Song Qinshu smiled awkwardly and secretly glanced at Xiaolong Nu. Seeing that there was no change in her expression, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but also felt a little disappointed. "Ask her to come in. Then introduce us to your female confidant," Li Qingluo said with a fake smile. During this period of time, they had been together and knew about Song Qinshu's situation. At this time, other than Shi Shangyun, the only one who would come to find him was Tang Sire. However, Li Qingluo knew her disciple's temperament. She would not announce him outside in a formal manner, and would use her lightness skill to barge in. The servant girl asked for his opinion. "I'll go take a look." Song Qinshu coughed twice. He felt that it was better for him to go take a look first. If it really was one of his confidants, it would be good to give her a warning in advance. It would be bad if she saw Li Qingluo and Xiaolong Nu unprepared, and caused some kind of scene. "Let's go take a look together. It's not polite for us to wait here." Li Qingluo stood up with a smile that was not a smile. Although Xiaolong Nu did not say anything, she also followed closely beside the 2 of them. This was enough to show her attitude. One is marked by the company one keeps. Even a girl like Xiaolong Nu has become a little two-faced because of Li Qingluo. Song Qinshu thought hatefully. However, he did not dare to openly say these words in his heart. The 3 of them walked out like this, each with their own ulterior motives. Soon, they arrived at the main entrance. They saw a handsome white horse standing at the entrance and a young girl in a fluttering white robe leaning on the horse. Her face was fair and tender, and her appearance was very pretty. However, it was obvious that her face was travel-worn. Looking at the young girl's beautiful and pure face, Li Qingluo cursed in her heart. That bastard is greedy and lustful, but his taste is really not bad. As she sighed, she suddenly thought that this was a disguised praise for her. The corners of her mouth could not help but rise slightly. Seeing the young girl's appearance, Song Qingshu was surprised and happy. "Miss Shui, why are you here?" This young girl was the female lead of the Linking City Secrets, Shui Xing. It had been some time since they last met at the Golden Snake Camp. "Brother Song." Seeing Song Qingshu, Shui Xing's eyes shone with a brilliant light, and she threw herself into his arms with a wisp of fragrant wind. Song Qingshu's whole body stiffened. Feeling her slightly trembling body, he couldn't help but feel a sense of tenderness in his heart. He stretched out his arms and held her in his arms. "You've become haggard recently." Cough cough. Li Qingluo, who was at the side, had goosebumps all over her body. She couldn't help but cough twice. Only then did Shui Xing realize that there were two outrageously beautiful women next to her. Her small face suddenly turned red. She instinctively pushed Song Qingshu away and struggled out of his arms. "Song Dage, who are they?" Let me introduce them to you. This is Madame Wang from Mantua Villa, and this is Miss Long from Ancient Tomb Sect. They are both my friends." Song Qingshu thought about it, but he really did not know how to describe his relationship with them. He could not tell Shui Xing that among these two women, the mature one was his friend with benefits, and the young one was more than a friend, but not yet a lover, right? "Nice to meet you, Madame Wang." "Nice to meet you, Miss Long." Even though Shui Xing had been praised for her beauty since she was young, the two women in front of her, one older and one younger, were so beautiful that they could not be compared to the world. The aura they exuded made her feel a little ashamed of her inferiority. Xiao Long Nu pursed her lips into a smile and nodded at her. For a young girl like her who was not familiar with worldly affairs, this kind of etiquette was already a great improvement. Li Qingluo was much more natural. "Nice to meet you, miss." Then, she turned to Song Qingshu and said with the ghost of a smile, "Aren't you going to introduce us to this lady?" I forgot. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly. "This is Miss Shui Xing, the daughter of Cold Moon Sword Shui Dai, one of the four wonders of the south, fallen flowers and flowing water." Song Qingshu could not help but feel a little puzzled. Why does this atmosphere make it seem like the main wife has met her mistress? These women are not my wives, nor are they my lovers. Why should I feel guilty? "The four wonders of the south?" Li Qingluo nodded. "You've always been known for your chivalry. Like father, like daughter." Song Qingshu knew that with her identity as the White Lotus Mother, it would be very difficult for her to take someone like the four wonders of the south seriously. She was already giving him face by praising them like this. "Let's go in first." Seeing how many passers-by would glance over from time to time, Song Qingshu felt rather displeased inside, as if he had suffered greatly just from a few extra glances at Xiao Long Nu and the others. He got the servant to take Shui Xing's Zhao Yebai away and take good care of her, while Song Qingshu led them to the main hall. "Have you settled your father's funeral?" Song Qingshu could not help but ask. Back then, something had happened to her father in the Golden Snake Camp. Afterwards, her uncle, who was also a major leader of the Golden Snake Camp, escorted Shui Dai and the others' coffins back to their hometown with her. When she heard him mention this, Shui Xing's eyes reddened. "It's all settled down. I'll bury him with my uncles so that they can continue to be sworn brothers in the afterlife." Song Qingshu sighed. "If their spirits are watching from above, they'll thank you for doing this. When I'm free one day, I'll go pay respects to my uncle with you." Hearing that, Shui Xing's pale cheeks flushed red. She gave an undetectable affirmative response. She did not turn him down. After all, with their relationship, it only made sense for her to bring this man back for her father to see. By the way, how did you find me here? Song Qingshu suddenly asked curiously. A trace of shyness flashed across Shu Aixing's white face. She replied softly, originally, I was at home to observe mourning for my father, but then I accidentally heard the news that you were infected with the golden ripple flower. I was worried about you, so I came out to find you. I didn't know how you were now. After thinking about it, I went to the Golden Snake Camp to discuss it with Sister Ajo and the others. Later, I learned from them that you were safe and sound. But I always wanted to see you in person to feel at ease, so I came to Lin An. Hearing this, Song Qingshu was moved and felt pity for her. She was just a young girl, and in this chaotic era of war, she had to travel north and south. She had to travel thousands of miles, and she must have suffered a lot. Seeing that Song Qingshu had been holding Shu Aixing's hand and asking about her well-being, Li Qingluo subconsciously glanced at her cousin on the side. Seeing that she was looking out of the window with a trace of worry between her eyebrows, she was suddenly very unhappy. She deliberately coughed and said, Song, let's talk about business first. There will be plenty of time for you to talk about love later. Shu Aixing was a little nervous because of the aura of the two peerless beauties. Hearing that, she retracted her hand as if she had been electrocuted. Song Qingshu glanced at Li Qingluo gloomily. Song, can't you be a little more polite to me? At the same time, he thought, when you were under me, you called me sweetly. You even called me good brother and so on. Why did you turn against me in the blink of an eye? It's good enough that I didn't call you bastard Song, Li Qingluo snorted lightly. The corners of her mouth rose slightly. Okay, let's continue talking about my uncle's children. Xiao Long Nu finally turned around and sighed. Is it really possible for my brothers to still be alive in this world? She had grown up in Gumu and had never thought that being an orphan was bad. It was only when she was with Yanghua that she felt a little bit of the warmth of being an orphan. It was a pity that when she first saw that scene in Gumu, Xiaolong Nu was disheartened. Later, when she entered the palace to assassinate the emperor, she had the thought of committing suicide. Who knew that she would suddenly find news of her parents? During this time, Li Qingluo had taken her to visit some of the places where her parents had stayed. She gradually had the concept of home in her heart. Now that she found out that she actually had a few brothers, she couldn't help but feel that blood was thicker than water. It was a pity that the brothers that she had never met were most likely dead. It's not like there's no hope at all. Seeing the light in Xiaolong Nu's eyes gradually recede, Li Qingluo didn't want her to return to that state of despair. She hurriedly advised, although I didn't find their whereabouts, I didn't see their corpses either. You should know that your eldest brother Yu Yun died by beheading and your second brother, Yu Lei, died in exile. I've already confirmed these, but I'm not so sure about the whereabouts of the other three brothers. Next, I'll interrogate Machi Rua's henchmen to see if there's anyone who knows about this. Cousin, why do you have to deliberately comfort me like this? With your influence, if you can't find anything after so many years of investigation, what can you find even if you investigate again? Although Xiaolong Nu didn't know much about worldly affairs, it didn't mean that she was stupid. She easily saw through Li Qingluo's thoughts. Li Qingluo was silent. Actually, she had investigated everything that needed to be investigated. She had even secretly captured and interrogated Machi Rua's henchmen. The answer she obtained was that they had all been secretly assassinated. It was just that no one could clearly tell where their corpses were, which made her fantasize. Are you talking about General Yu's orphans? I might know. At this moment, a weak voice suddenly sounded from the side. Song Qingshu, Li Qingluo and even Xiaolong Nu, who had always been indifferent to the outside world, suddenly turned around to look at the blushing Shu Aixing. You know where they are? Li Qingluo grabbed Shu Aixing's hand and asked excitedly. Noticing Shui Xing's furrowed brows, Song Qinshu hurriedly pulled Li Qingluo's hand away. Don't be so agitated. Your martial arts are so high you're hurting me. You're the only one who has tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Li Qingluo rolled her eyes at him, but she didn't have the time to get angry with him. She only looked eagerly at Shui Xing. Some time ago, when I was tidying up my father's belongings, I found a notebook. Seeing that Song Qinshu was so concerned about her, Shui Xing felt a sweetness in her heart. She then explained, it mentioned that my third uncle, Lu Qingfeng, was entrusted by one of his clansmen many years ago to save a few children. My third uncle was worried that he would ruin the clan's plans by himself, so he invited my father and a few other sworn brothers to go with him. How do you know that those children are General Yu's orphans? Li Qingluo asked suspiciously. Over the years, she had received many similar news, but unfortunately they were all false. She knew that the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. She didn't want her cousin to experience such pain. I guessed, Shui Xing said awkwardly, her face red. Chapter 1340. You guessed it. Song Qinshu couldn't help laughing. He didn't expect Shui Xing to be so funny. Li Qingluo's face darkened. If it wasn't for the fact that she was Song Qinshu's friend, with her usual temperament, she might have directly used her as fertilizer. Why did you guess so? Worried that Li Qingluo would explode, Song Qinshu hurried to smooth things over. Seeing their reaction, Shui Xing thought she had said something wrong. She lowered her voice. Uncle Lu's clansman is called Lu Yunxing. Lu Yunxing? Song Qinshu was confused. He had never heard of this person. Li Qingluo was so excited that she grabbed Shui Xing's hand. Is that person really called Lu Yunxing? Yes, Shui Xing was shocked by her reaction and nodded subconsciously. Who is this Lu Yunxing? Why are you so excited? Song Qinshu couldn't help but ask. Xiaolong Nu also looked at her curiously. Li Qingluo sighed and a look of reminiscence appeared on her face. She began to narrate the events of the past. That year, little uncle was framed by Qin Hui. Ma Qishui was sent to investigate this case. At that time, the minister of the Supreme Court, Li Ruopu and He Yenyu, both believed that little uncle was not guilty. They argued with Ma Qishui and both were dismissed from their positions. Other than the people of the imperial court crying out for Yu Fei's innocence, the common people were also in an uproar. Among them, the most famous was the commoner Lu Yunxing, who submitted a petition to seek redress for his uncle's injustice. In the end, the Supreme Court was already under the control of that bastard Ma Qichu, and he ordered his execution. Song Qinshu's countenance changed with fright and he could not help but praise, "What a virtuous and righteous man!" Even Xiaolong Nu's countenance changed several times upon hearing this. Shui Xing then said, before Lu Yunxing submitted the memorial, he knew that he would not be able to escape death, so he found the famous soft cloud sword Lu Qingfeng, who is also my father's sworn brother, and asked him to go to Zheojiang to do something. Li Qingluo exclaimed, before they came to Linan, they lived on the edge of Mount Lu in Zheojiang. Xiaolong Nu couldn't help but ask, Miss Shui, what happened after that? Even though they were both women, Shui Xing was still amazed by her beauty. Because third uncle was worried that something might happen along the way and that it would be difficult for him to handle it alone, he specially asked first uncle, benevolent and righteous Lu Broadsword, Lu Tianshu, second uncle, invincible of Zhongping, Hua Taigan, and my father to go together. Shui Xing paused for a moment before continuing, my father didn't say what he was going to do either. He only said that he and his brothers were very happy after rescuing Zhongliang. Song Qinshu couldn't help but sigh with emotion after hearing this. The reason why the fallen flower and flowing water was famous was probably because the four of them had fought against one expert of the same level, but in the end, they were killed by the blood knife ancestor. This made them famous for their heaven-defying battle prowess. Their nickname, fallen flower and flowing water, had also become a laughing stock. This was especially so for Hua Taigon, who had sold out his friends for glory. Previously in the Golden Snake Camp, Song Qingshu stopped Shui Xing from killing Hua Taigon mainly because the four of them had been chivalrous all their lives. They couldn't deny everything he had done just because of one mistake. Now it seemed that it was fortunate that they didn't do anything at that time. The four of them had saved Yu Fei's orphan, which was such a righteous act. If they had killed him, at this time, Song Qingshu would definitely be condemned by his conscience. Of course, he didn't know that Hua Taigon had been killed by Ah Qing later because of courting death. The more Li Qingluo thought about it, the more excited she became. She couldn't help but murmur to herself, then it all fits. When Lu Yunxing submitted the letter, my uncle had not been killed yet, so Lu Qingfeng and the others went to Zheojiang in advance to rescue my cousins. Later, the killers sent by Qin Hui and Ma Qifeng must have been afraid of being blamed by their superiors, so they all unified that they had completed the task. Even Qin Hui and Ma Qifeng were deceived. No wonder no matter how hard I tortured those people, I couldn't get any useful information. Turns out that they were also deceived by those killers. Xiaolong Nu's eyes also bloomed with a glimmer of light. Cousin, are you saying that my brothers might still be alive? Yes, Li Qingluo nodded excitedly and looked at Shui Xing with a face full of eagerness. Miss Shui, did your father's notes record where they had saved those people? He didn't say it clearly, Shui Xing said hesitantly, but the notes did mention a few places. Where? Li Qingluo hurriedly asked. Shui Xing shook her head. I just casually flipped through the notes at that time and didn't pay much attention to those places. I can't remember them now. Did you bring your father's notes with you? Li Qingluo asked, unwilling to give up. Shui Xing still shook her head and said apologetically, No, it's in my hometown in Jinling. Xiaolong Nu's face was full of disappointment. Li Qingluo hesitated for a moment, then looked at Shui Xing and said, Miss Shui, I have a presumptuous request. Can you take us to your hometown? Of course. Shui Xing didn't refuse. Why don't we set off immediately? Li Qingluo said excitedly. Shui Xing looked at her in surprise. Song Qingshu furrowed his brows. I've just arrived, and you want me to accompany you on your journey? This is indeed a presumptuous request. Li Qingluo sighed faintly. I also know that this request is a bit difficult, but I have been investigating this matter for 20 years. It's not easy for me to see hope, and I don't want to drag it out for too long. What do you mean by dragging it out for too long? Song Qingshu asked curiously. In any case, the court has already announced it to the world. When young masters you hear the news, they will naturally come to the capital. Why are you in such a hurry? Li Qingluo shook her head. No, Ma Qichun and Zhang Jun have been prime ministers for so many years, they have already formed an incomparably large group. Now that the two of them are dead, there are still many remnants of them. For example, Zhang Ro, who is a loyal soldier in the Dabi Mountains but is actually a bandit. If they seek revenge for my master, my cousins will be in danger. Song Qingshu frowned, knowing that what she said made sense. With the grudge between Ma Qichun and Zhang Jun's group and Yu Fei, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't take revenge on his children. Brother Song, you don't have to worry about me. I will bring these two sisters back to Jinling. Shui Xing suddenly said. But you have been covered in dust from the journey. No matter what, you need to rest for a few days. Song Qingshu said with a heartache. Shui Xing shook her head and smiled. Saving young masters you is the thing that my father is most proud of in his life. If something unexpected happened and caused all his efforts to be in vain, he would not be able to rest in peace. How can I become an unfilial daughter because of a little hardship? This. When Shui Xing mentioned her father, Song Qingshu didn't know how to persuade her. Moreover, Shui Xing's face was slightly red. She glanced at Li Qingluo and Xiaolong Nu, revealing an expression of wanting to say something but hesitating. Cousin, let's go pack our luggage first. Li Qingluo tactfully pulled Xiao Longnu out of the room. Seeing that they had left, Shueixing said, Brother Song, my father's body has not yet turned cold. According to the rules where I come from, I have to observe mourning for him for 3 years. This time, when I heard that something had happened to you, I specially came out. Now that I see that you are safe, I can rest assured. Hearing her words, Song Qingshu's heart was filled with tenderness. He gently pulled her into his arms. Shueixing's face was slightly red, but she didn't refuse. Big Brother Song, I really want to be with you, but I really should go back to observe the mourning period for my father. Shueixing leaned her face against his chest and felt his breath. Suddenly, she felt that the tiredness of the past few days had disappeared without a trace. In that case, I won't keep you any longer. When I finish my work, I will come to Jinling to find you. Song Qingshu said softly. Shueixing's eyes suddenly lit up. You must come, I will wait for you. Seeing her excited look, Song Qingshu suddenly had the idea to tease her. What if I accidentally forget? Shueixing snorted. If you dare to forget, after I observe mourning for 3 years, I will come to find you and tell the world that you have abandoned me. Hearing this, Song Qingshu was speechless. Don't use this word carelessly, okay? When did I mess around with you? Shueixing's face also flashed a trace of shyness. She bit her lip and whispered, You mess up my heart. Hearing this, Song Qingshu's heart warmed up, and he lowered his head to kiss her lips. With a cry, Shueixing hurriedly pushed him away, her face redder than rouge, and her whole body was shy and angry. I am still observing mourning for my father now. Only then did Song Qingshu realize that he had been rash. He hurriedly hugged her and coaxed her. With great difficulty, he made her change from angry to happy. Not long after, Li Qingluo and Xiao Longnu packed up their luggage. Although he was a little reluctant in his heart, Song Qingshu still sent the 3 of them to the carriage. Take good care of them. Before leaving, Song Qingshu told Li Qingluo. Li Qingluo glanced at him with a faint smile. Do you want me to take care of my cousin or Miss Shui? Of course, Miss Shui. Song Qingshu saw through her thoughts and glared at her. Anyway, Xiao Longnu was his beloved cousin, and he would take good care of her even if he didn't say anything. You are smart. After a smile, Li Qingluo's voice became serious. After we go to Jinling to find out the information, we should immediately leave for Zhejiang. Lin and city is treacherous, you should be careful, don't wait until the next time we come back, you are dead. Song Qingshu's lips twitched. Are you concerned about me or cursing me? What do you think? Li Qingluo turned around and boarded the carriage, leaving a string of coquettish laughter. By the way, don't bully my female apprentice when I am not here. Song Qingshu directly ignored her words and looked directly at Xiao Longnu. Unfortunately, he didn't know whether there were other people present or something else, but Xiao Longnu didn't mean to say goodbye to him and boarded the carriage early. Noticing his gaze from the window, Xiao Longnu only gave him a slight nod before turning her gaze to the distance, causing Song Qingshu to be extremely depressed. A while ago, we were clearly so close. Why are we suddenly estranged from each other? Could it be that Li Qingluo, that witch, has said something bad about me in front of her? Unfortunately, until the outline of the carriage disappeared from his sight, he still couldn't figure out the answer. For the first time, he sighed. A woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Back to the room, looking at the empty house, Song Qingshu suddenly felt a little sad. It was lively before, but in a short time, it was empty. Chapter 1341. In addition to Li Yuanji, there was also Chen Yuanyuan, who was considered a femme fatale by all the men in the world. He had been so busy recently that he had no time to take care of them. He didn't know if anything had happened to the 2 women in the palace. With this thought, Song Qingshu could no longer suppress his worry. Even though the sun had not set, he couldn't care so much. He immediately left and quietly sneaked into the palace. After all, it was not night time. Now that he wanted to enter the palace in broad daylight, even with Song Qingshu's peerless qigong, he had to be careful. Fortunately, there were not many people in the cold palace, so he managed to sneak in safely. I wonder how they are getting along. That girl Yuanji is weird, and has never liked Chen Yuanyuan and her mother. Chen Yuanyuan doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Could she have been bullied badly by her? Song Qingshu couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Chen Yuanyuan. But when he arrived at their residence, he couldn't help but be stunned because the scene in front of him was very different from what he had imagined. Chen Yuanyuan was not crying in the corner with bruises all over her body, and Li Yuanji was not holding a whip and laughing wildly in front of her like a witch. The two women were sitting quietly opposite each other. Chen Yuanyuan was as beautiful and elegant as ever, and the always lively Li Yuanji had transformed into a quiet beauty. Curious, Song Qingshu took a few steps closer and found that the two women were playing Go. Li Yuanji held a black piece in her hand and was about to move it several times, but she eventually retracted it. She gently bit her finger and frowned in thought. She looked very cute. Chen Yuanyuan was still looking at her with a smile, not at all impatient. Suddenly, she saw Song Qingshu next to her and couldn't help but tremble. Because her back was facing them, Li Yuanji didn't notice Song Qingshu at first. It wasn't until she noticed the change in Chen Yuanyuan's expression that she turned her head in confusion. When she saw Song Qingshu clearly, her furrowed eyebrows instantly relaxed. "Big brother Song," Li Yuanji cried out in joy as she jumped into Song Qingshu's arms, bringing with her a fragrant breeze. Hugging the girl's soft body, Song Qingshu gave a knowing smile. Little sister Yuanji, looking at the scene in front of her, Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help but be envious. Although she was the most beautiful woman in the world, and countless men fell under her skirt, she had never found a man like this who could make her rush into his arms with such a girlish attitude. The two of them hugged each other tightly for a while. Li Yuanji suddenly realized that there was an audience watching them. She blushed and jumped out of his arms. Who knew that her opponent would collapse at the first touch? Li Yuanji, who was at the side, was instantly dumbfounded before she could finish her praise. Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help it anymore. She covered her mouth and laughed softly. "So Gongzi really is a lousy chess player." Song Qingshu's face was gloomy. "I already said that I don't know how to play, but you guys still want me to play." In his heart, however, he was indignant. If it was like those system-driven novels in his previous life, where he brought an alpha dog with him when he transmigrated, it would be strange if he didn't torture her until she had climaxes. "You scoundrel! You made me lose face." Thinking about how she had praised him to the heavens, Li Yuanji couldn't help but punch him in the chest with her pink fist. "Not playing anymore, not playing anymore." Song Qingshu guiltily messed up the chessboard. Seeing him act like a hoodlum on the street, Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help but laugh. Song Qingshu hurriedly changed the topic. "That's right, how is Madame's injury?" Chen Yuanyuan smiled slightly. "It's almost healed." The scene of him treating her wound suddenly appeared in her mind. Especially when the guards outside came to search the room, he violated her. Her already beautiful face became even more tender and beautiful. "That's good," Song Qingshu suddenly asked with a strange expression. "Did she bully you during this period of time?" Li Yuanji, who was at the side, immediately objected. "Brother Song, in your heart, am I such a barbaric person?" Chen Yuanyuan smiled gently. "Sister Yuanji has always treated me very well." In fact, in the beginning, Li Yuanji was indeed full of hostility towards her, but she had grown up in a brothel, and later mingled with so many powerful men. What she was best at was making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Although Li Yuanji was smart, she was still a young girl who didn't know much about the world. She casually used a few tricks to close the relationship between the two of them. Li Yuanji, who was at the side, heard her words and couldn't help but look at Song Qingshu proudly. Song Qingshu lovingly rubbed her hair, and then said to Chen Yuanyuan, "Madam, Do you mind if I take your pulse? Chen Yuanyuan rolled her eyes at him and thought, you've already done that to me, and now you even have to ask me to take your pulse. Of course not. After saying that, she reached out her hand in front of him. Looking at the pure white wrist in front of her, Li Yuanji couldn't help but reach out and touch it. Sister, your skin is so white and smooth, I really don't know how you take care of it. Chen Yuanyuan blushed and subconsciously pulled down her sleeve to cover the skin on her forearm. Song Qingshu coughed twice and hurriedly got rid of all distracting thoughts to take her pulse. He found that her pulse was steady and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Madam's injury is almost healed. As long as you rest and recuperate, you will soon recover. This is all thanks to young master's treatment, Chen Yuanyuan said with a smile. Song Qingshu subconsciously glanced at her lower abdomen. Chen Yuanyuan was stunned. Only then did she realize that her words just now were ambiguous, and her pretty face instantly turned red. Ahem. Song Qingshu recovered quickly and hurriedly resolved the embarrassment. Since Madam's injury is almost healed, I should send Madam back. Actually, I think this cold palace is a good place to cultivate. During this time, my heart is calmer than ever before, Chen Yuanyuan said softly. Song Qingshu was stunned. He didn't understand what she meant by her answer. Could it be that she had developed feelings for living here and didn't want to go back? I plan to take Sister Yuanji out of the palace. It's time for her to see her father. How can I rest assured if you live alone in this cold palace? Song Qingshu said. What's more, your daughter has been very worried about you during this time. Hearing him mention Aku, Chen Yuanyuan swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Indeed, she had been out for too long, and it was time to go back. Can I really leave the palace? Li Yuanji asked in surprise. Of course. Song Qingshu stroked her soft hair. You've suffered staying in the cold palace all this time. Previously, he had let Li Yuanji stay here because of her sensitive identity. Now that the general situation had been settled, she had become an insignificant person in the palace. In addition, now that everyone's attention was on Yu Fei's case, taking her away quietly at this time would not cause a ripple. The biggest problem now is how to send you back. Song Qingshu looked at Chen Yuanyuan and said in distress, I can't take you directly to Aku. That way, I won't be able to explain to the people in the palace. The three of them discussed for a while and finally came up with a plan. Let Chen Yuanyuan pretend to be imprisoned in the cold palace, then let the nearby palace maids or imperial concubines in the cold palace accidentally discover her, so that the imperial guards would take the initiative to rescue her. The biggest problem is your statement after being rescued. The imperial guards will definitely ask about what happened during this time. Song Qingshu looked at Chen Yuanyuan worriedly. Don't worry. I've experienced many ups and downs in my life. I can handle such a small matter. Chen Yuanyuan smiled slightly, her tone graceful and calm. That's good. Song Qingshu also believed that she could make up a reasonable story. Then he looked at Li Yuanji next to him, his heart full of playfulness. Why don't you go be the imperial concubine who snitches? Maybe you can even restore your status as an imperial concubine. Bah! Li Yuanji spat with a red face. I don't want to be the imperial concubine of Zhao and Song. Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help but tease. Then whose imperial concubine do you want to be? As she spoke, her eyes deliberately glanced at Song Qingshu. Although Li Yuanji was sometimes bold and unrestrained, she was a shy girl after all. How could she withstand such teasing? Sister, you're teasing me too. I'll ignore you guys. I'm going to walk around the cold palace and see who is suitable to be the informant. After saying that, she ran out as if she was escaping. It's rare to see this girl shy. Watching her figure disappear outside the door, Chen Yuanyuan pursed her lips and smiled. After all, she's still a little girl. Song Qingshu also couldn't help but laugh. Seeing him yawning as he spoke, Chen Yuanyuan said for some reason, Are you very tired? Do you want me to massage you? Chapter 1342. Song Qingshu was startled. He didn't have such thoughts, but since she took the initiative to suggest it, he naturally wouldn't refuse. Sure. Song Qingshu sat upright on the couch, leaving enough space behind him, and gestured for her to come behind him. Chen Yuanyuan regretted it the moment she opened her mouth, but seeing that he didn't have any intention of modestly declining, she couldn't help but feel angry and amused at the same time. After hesitating for a while, she climbed over the chessboard, and half-knelt behind Song Qingshu to massage him. When Chen Yuanyuan's fingers touched his shoulder, Song Qingshu felt an electric current flow through his body, and only felt that the countless pores on his body were very comfortable. This technique, even the technicians in the high-class clubs in my previous life can't compare. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly, but he quickly came to his senses. Chen Yuanyuan was the most popular actress in the world back then. Compared to the technicians in his previous life, she was many levels higher. It was only natural that her skills were better. So comfortable. Song Qingshu couldn't help but close his eyes, relax his body, and began to enjoy the service that even the emperor couldn't enjoy. Gongzi, if you're tired, you can lie down and take a good rest. Chen Yuanyuan's soft and pleasant voice usually easily made people restless, but now Song Qingshu couldn't have the slightest evil thoughts. His heart was only filled with the warmth and relaxation of a family. Okay. Song Qingshu was indeed a little tired after running around for Yufei's case. After getting his approval, Chen Yuanyuan smiled slightly, and gently held Song Qingshu's head and neck, and slowly laid him down. At this moment, Song Qingshu completely relaxed his muscles, and let her do as she pleased. Suddenly, he felt a soft but elastic place under his head, and he couldn't help but be surprised. At this moment, Chen Yuanyuan's face was also slightly red. She put Song Qingshu down and originally wanted to find a pillow for him to rest on, but when she looked around, she realized that the nearest pillows were far beyond her reach. If she got up to grab one, it would inevitably alarm him and wake him up from his relaxed state. She hesitated for a while and finally supported Song Qingshu's head to rest on her lap. Feeling the other party's round and tight thighs, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel restless. Fortunately, Chen Yuanyuan's fingers gently rubbed his temples. The gentleness of her fingertips gradually dispelled the restlessness in his heart. Even if she doesn't have this stunning beauty, she should still be a very charming woman. Feeling Chen Yuanyuan's gentle hands and smelling the faint fragrance on her body, coupled with the fact that he was overtired these days, he soon fell into a deep sleep. Looking at the man in her arms who was a year younger than her, Chen Yuanyuan's expression was rather complicated. Previously, because he had tricked Aku into coming to Yanjing City as a hostage, she did not have a good impression of him at all. But now that they met again, he was already a man whose name had shaken the world. A few days ago, he had shone brilliantly in the imperial palace, completely like a banished immortal. But when she thought of that time when the two of them were hiding under the bed, she felt incomparably embarrassed. Which side is the real you? Looking at the man's sculpture-like firm and handsome lines, Chen Yuanyuan's expression became complicated and difficult to understand. Brother Song, Sister Yuanyuan, Li Yuanji went out to wander around and finally found a suitable candidate. She ran back excitedly to report the good news, but who knew she would see such a shocking scene? Li Yuanji only thought that Song Qingshu had hooked up with Chen Yuanyuan in such a short time. She felt jealous and wronged, and her eyes instantly turned red. Just as she was about to lose her temper, Chen Yuanyuan hurriedly made a gesture to her to keep quiet. He is too tired. Let him have a good rest, Chen Yuanyuan whispered to her. Li Yuanji was startled. She walked over to take a look and noticed the tiredness between her lover's eyebrows. Only then did she know that she had misunderstood the two of them. The feeling of grievance disappeared, and what was left was only heartache and pity. Why don't you replace me? Chen Yuanyuan said unnaturally as she pretended to get up. Originally, she had a clear conscience and felt that the two of them were beautiful. However, the two of them were lovers after all. It felt weird to let her lover sleep on her lap in front of Li Yuanji. No need, in case you wake him up. Li Yuanji hurriedly stopped her. Seeing Li Yuanji looking at Song Qingshu with her hand on her cheek, her eyes full of tenderness, Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help but feel envious. This kind of pure, flawless, carefree love was something she had never had before. Song Qingshu woke up and subconsciously wanted to sit up. However, his head bumped into something soft, and he instantly heard a cry of surprise. Only then did Song Qingshu return to his senses. He found that Chen Yuanyuan was holding her chest and looking at him with a reproachful expression. How could he not understand what he had just bumped into? Sorry, Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly. What happened? Li Yuanji had also fallen asleep while watching. Now, she opened her eyes in a daze. Nothing. Chen Yuanyuan took the initiative to smooth things over. At the same time, she discreetly shrunk back. It's been a long time since I've had such a good sleep. Song Qingshu stretched, feeling refreshed. Of course, Sister Yuanyuan's lap is more comfortable than a pillow. Li Yuanji pouted and said, This is a blessing that even the Emperor can't enjoy. Don't talk nonsense. Chen Yuanyuan glared at her. Seeing her rubbing her thigh from time to time, Song Qingshu had an apologetic expression. I slept for so long. Are you feeling uncomfortable? I'm fine. Chen Yuanyuan smiled slightly. My leg is just a little numb. Song Qingshu smiled apologetically. He walked to the window and noticed that night had fallen. He turned around and asked Li Yuanji, Sister Yuanji, how's the person you're looking for? Is there anything that I can't do? Don't worry, I've already found a target. Li Yuanji raised her chin proudly. That's good. Song Qingshu nodded. Now that it's dark, I'll go find Aku to communicate and unify the accounts. Be careful, Chen Yuanyuan and Li Yuanji said in unison. After speaking, they looked at each other in shock. Don't worry. Even if it's a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, I will come and go as I please. Who in the world can keep me here? Song Qingshu smiled confidently, and his figure quickly disappeared into the night sky. He didn't know how many times he had entered the imperial palace. Song Qingshu was now familiar with the way. When he passed by the residences of some of the imperial concubines in the Hogong, he even thought without malice that if he suddenly had the idea one day and came to the imperial palace to sleep with one or two imperial concubines, no one would find out. It was a pity that he had the ability now, but he didn't have the mind. It was like many people in his previous life. When they were young, they wanted all kinds of toys and snacks, but they didn't have money. When they grew up and had money, they couldn't return to the desire for toys and snacks of the past. At this time, Aku had sent away the palace maids and was sitting alone by the window looking at the bright moon in the sky. In her mind, the scene of Song Qingshu walking down step by step from the sky kept appearing. At that time, there seemed to be a bright moon behind him. But when she thought of her current identity and fate, she couldn't help but sigh faintly. Little girl, why are you sighing? Is it because the night is long and lonely and you can't sleep? A teasing male voice suddenly sounded in her ear. In the depths of the imperial palace, a man's voice suddenly appeared. In addition, Aku was originally unprepared. In her shock, she subconsciously dodged back. Unfortunately, she was sitting by the window. When she dodged, she instantly lost her center of gravity and fell down. Aku cried out in surprise. She was already prepared to fall to the ground. In her heart, she was even afraid that this fall would accidentally disfigure her face or something. The collision and pain that she imagined didn't come as expected. Instead, her whole body fell into a warm and strong embrace. But she didn't feel the slightest bit happy. What followed was endless fear. She instinctively struggled with all her might. Let me go! Am I that scary? A depressed male voice sounded in her ear. Why does it sound so familiar? Aku subconsciously looked up and saw a face that she hated to the bone, but also yearned for day and night. It's you! Aku cried out in surprise. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. Otherwise, who else would it be? Aku's face turned red. She pushed him away. Let me go. Song Qingshu didn't intend to deliberately take advantage of her. Hearing this, he helped her up and spread out his hand. I just saw you fall just now. You came to find me at this time. Did you already finish what I asked you to do? Aku took a step back and said with a slightly guarded tone. Hearing this, Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. Last time, you asked me to either kill that assassin or Huang Chang. But those two are peerless experts. How could they be killed so easily? One was him, and the other was Huang Chang, who was no weaker than him. How could he kill them? Then why did you come to find me? Aku bit her lip. Her heart began to beat faster. Song Qingshu shrugged. Although I didn't kill those two, I helped you save your mother. Is that okay? Is my mother still well? Aku grabbed Song Qingshu's arm. Her trembling eyelashes showed that she was not calm at all. She originally thought that with her mother's beauty, and the fact that she had been struck by Huang Chang, who was like a half-immortal, she was most likely dead after being kidnapped. Now that she heard news of her mother, how could she not be excited? She was injured before, but I've already healed her, Song Qingshu replied. Where is she now? Aku asked nervously. I came here to tell you about this, Song Qingshu explained. I was planning to send her back, but you also know that the way she disappeared is quite sensitive. If I send her back directly, there will be a lot of trouble, so I plan to. He then explained his previous plan. My mother is at the Cold Palace now? Aku asked. Yes. Song Qingshu nodded. I came to inform you so that you can prepare. I'll go back and start the plan now. He was about to turn and leave when Aku grabbed his hand. Wait. Chapter 1343. Hearing Aku's words, Song Qingshu was completely dumbfounded. He had imagined Aku's reaction after hearing news of Chen Yuan, but he could not think of this situation. Go far away? Song Qingshu confirmed again. After all, it was strange for a daughter to let a man take her mother far away. That's right. Noticing the other's strange expression, Aku realized that it would be difficult for others to misunderstand. She hurriedly explained, The main thing is that it is too dangerous for my mother to stay in the palace. I don't know who that mysterious assassin is, but his martial arts are so strong that he can enter the palace as if there was no one there. Once my mother returns, he will come looking for her. Song Qingshu's expression became even more strange. He unconsciously rubbed his nose and said embarrassedly, Don't worry, that assassin won't come. Why? Aku clearly did not believe his words. Because I saved your mother from the hands of that person. He was injured by me, and he won't be able to recover for 10 years. Song Qingshu had originally wanted to say that he had killed the assassin, but he quickly thought that it was too inauspicious and changed his words. Really? Aku was skeptical and her face suddenly blushed. Then why didn't you take the opportunity to kill him? That way you could receive my repayment. Seeing the young girl's bashful appearance, Song Qingshu was pleased and could only find an excuse to explain. That person's martial arts were too high. I could only injure him, but not kill him. Even your martial arts couldn't kill him? Aku's face was full of shock. Ahem, Song Qingshu was worried that if she continued to ask, his lie would be exposed, and he quickly diverted her attention. Now you should be relieved to let your mother return. But Aku still shook her head. Actually, what I am most worried about is not the assassin, but Huang Chang. Huang Chang? Song Qingshu couldn't help but frown. Aku replied, Huang Chang has always loathed my mother. He feels that my mother is an inauspicious woman who has already ruined the Ming dynasty. He does not want her to ruin the Song dynasty as well. He has already advised the Emperor many times to expel my mother from the palace, but I begged the Emperor to stop him. Who would have thought that he would take advantage of the assassination attempt to harm my mother? Song Qingshu knew that she was telling the truth. Last time, he had seen it with his own eyes. Huang Chang had indeed wanted to take Chen Yuanyuan's life. If my mother continues to stay in the imperial palace, Huang Chang will definitely find an opportunity to harm her. His martial arts are so high, how can we protect ourselves? Aku looked at him pleadingly. You've harmed my mother by sending her back, so please take her away from the imperial palace. Then where can I take her? Song Qingshu frowned. Shanghai Pass? After all, Wu Sangui was still Chen Yuanyuan's husband in name. Song Qingshu secretly thought, if Aku really wanted him to take Chen Yuanyuan to Shanghai Pass, he would refuse no matter what. After all, he did not have the time to travel thousands of li to Shanghai Pass. Not to Shanghai Pass. Aku's reaction was also very intense. Mother and daughter were connected. She knew her mother's thoughts. She most likely did not want to go back for the rest of her life. Then where to? Song Qingshu frowned. I don't know. Aku shook her head. Can you take me to see my mother? Okay. Song Qingshu did not hesitate. After all, Chen Yuanyuan had always been thinking of her. Aku suddenly had an awkward expression. But if I go out, there will be a large group of palace maids and eunuchs. Will I alert the enemy and ruin your plan? Song Qingshu smiled slightly. Don't worry, I'm here. With that said, he grabbed her slender waist and directly jumped out of the window. Being suddenly hugged by a man, Aku's first reaction was that the other party wanted to do something to her. She was about to shout for help when she suddenly realized that the other party was secretly taking her to the cold palace in order not to alert the other people in the palace. After thinking it through, Aku's body was no longer stiff and gradually relaxed. The tall walls and trees that she usually heard whistled past her ears, but she did not have the time to enjoy this rare experience. Instead, she looked up at the man who was hugging her. Song Qingshu clearly also noticed her gaze. He lowered his head and smiled at her, then quickly turned his attention back to the front. After all, the palace was heavily guarded, and there was also the unfathomable Huang Chang. He had to be very careful. Although it was night time, Aku had been dazzled by his smile just now. Her heart pounded, but she quickly thought of her current status and the humiliation of being rejected by him in the past. Her beautiful face gradually paled. Song Qingshu did not have the ability to read minds, so he naturally did not know that the girl in his arms had 1,000 knots in her heart. The two of them were like smoke, quietly returning to the cold palace. Aku? Chen Yuanyuan was chatting with Li Yuanji when she saw the two people suddenly appear. She exclaimed in disbelief. Mother, seeing her mother, Aku also woke up from her melancholy state. She jumped out of Song Qingshu's arms and excitedly threw herself into her mother's arms. When the mother and daughter last parted, they originally thought that they would be far apart. Who knew that they would have a chance to meet again? They were so excited that they could not help but hug each other and cry bitterly. Seeing the sincere affection between the mother and daughter, Li Yuanji's eyes also turned red. She choked and said, I also miss my mother. Don't you miss your father? Song Qingshu gently put his arm around her shoulder and comforted her. Don't worry. You have already repaid what your father owed me. I won't make trouble for him anymore. After we leave the palace, I will send you back to meet your parents. Thank you, Brother Song. Li Yuanji nodded as she wiped her tears. Mother, was the mysterious assassin who kidnapped you last time Song Qingshu? Aku suddenly looked up at Chen Yuanyuan and asked. Song Qingshu almost choked to death on his saliva. She was clearly warm just now. How did she change so quickly? He was thinking about how to explain to her later. After all, he had been lying to her before. Who knew that after a moment of surprise, Chen Yuanyuan directly replied, Silly child, why would you think that? It was clearly Prince Song who saved me. Song Qingshu stilled. He didn't expect that Chen Yuanyuan would hide the truth for him. At the side, Li Yuanji looked at him, and then at Chen Yuanyuan with a smile that was not a smile. Ako quietly looked at his mother's eyes. Seeing that he couldn't see any flaws, he smiled. Nothing, I was just asking. Song Qingshu was worried that if she continued to ask, Chen Yuanyuan would reveal some flaws. After all, there were some things that happened between the two of them that couldn't be explained to Aku. He hurriedly diverted her attention. Just now, Aku said not to send you back to the palace. He then recounted what they had just discussed. Chen Yuanyuan smiled slightly. What does it matter? Huang Chang killing me will help me wash away the sins of my life. Aku panicked and was about to say something when Song Qingshu spoke first. The public's mouth can melt gold, and the accumulated damage can melt the bones. Foreign has heard too many rumors. Now, even she feels that she is a femme fatale. Chen Yuanyuan smiled sadly. Is it not? Of course not. Song Qingshu said resolutely and decisively, pushing a man's failure onto a woman is a kind of cowardice and evasion. This is the behavior that people look down upon the most. Foreign, the reason why you are called a femme fatale is because those people are trying to cover up their own cowardice and incompetence. Really? Chen Yuanyuan's eyes lit up. In fact, it wasn't that no one had said similar words before, but the same words had a different effect when said by different people. In the past, the great scholar Wu Meizuan had also tried to persuade her like this. But Wu Meizuan was just a scholar, and it was inevitable that he would try to please her. Song Qingshu was different. His name was now known throughout the world, and he was a marquis. The evaluation of this kind of top person in the world was naturally better than that of an ordinary person. Of course it is true, Song Qingshu changed the topic. In fact, you don't have to worry about being called a femme fatale. In my hometown, the term femme fatale is used to praise women. Not to mention Li Yuanji, even Aku couldn't stand it anymore. He thought to himself that it was no wonder he had so many female friends in the world. His ability to please women was really amazing. But Chen Yuanyuan didn't seem to feel the sappiness. She only said angrily, Gongzi must be joking. How can a woman be praised as a femme fatale? Song Qingshu replied, when the people in my hometown meet a beautiful woman, they will often use the word devastatingly beautiful to describe her. But if they meet a woman who is even more beautiful, other words will no longer be able to describe her, and they will praise her as a femme fatale. Is that so? Chen Yuanyuan pursed her lips and smiled. Then if I have the chance, I will really go to Gongzi's hometown to take a look. From her tone, it was obvious that she didn't believe him. The two women beside her also looked suspicious. Song Qingshu immediately became anxious. I swear to the heavens, if I'm lying, lightning will immediately strike me. Although flags couldn't be randomly raised, he really didn't lie this time. In his previous life, there were different levels of beauty on the internet. Above devastatingly beautiful was indeed the level of a femme fatale. Gongzi, please don't make such a vicious oath, Chen Yuanyuan hurriedly said. I believe you. Li Yuanji, who was standing to the side, curled her lips. Brother Song was really trying hard to please a woman. She really is an existence that can bring calamity to a country. Even the world-famous Golden Snake King lost his composure in front of her. At this time, an old voice suddenly sounded from outside the door. The people in the room turned to look. When they saw Huang Cheng's signature black cloak, the women's expressions changed. Only Song Qingshu didn't panic. He smiled and said, as the saying goes, money can't buy a beauty's smile, and I can't bear to see women sad. A mere oath is nothing. Huang Chang lightly said, you have a sharp tongue. No wonder so many women are attracted to you. Hearing his words, the three women beside him immediately blushed. Song Qingshu couldn't help but become gloomy. I say, old Huang, you didn't come here on purpose to make fun of me, did you? Huang Cheng's body stiffened. It was obvious that he was caught unprepared by the words, "Old Huang." After a long time, he finally snorted. "You kidnapped the imperial concubine, and now I've caught you red-handed. Why don't you seem worried at all?" Chapter 1344. Hearing his words, Huang Chang fell into silence. After a while, he replied, "That's right, with your level of cultivation, I can't keep you here. But now that you have to take care of them, the situation is different." Song Qingshu smiled. "Old Huang, you are a famous senior in Wulin, an existence like an immortal. How can you learn from those despicable people? When the martial arts of Wulin reach a certain level, other than cultivation, one's state of mind and spirit will greatly affect one's fighting ability. The most obvious examples were people like Jinluan Fuang and Taoist Bai Shen. Their martial arts were the best in the world of Jianghu, but they were willing to be the dogs and eagles of others. Their state of mind wasn't great, so their combat ability was greatly reduced. On the opposite side was Ouyang Feng. Even though he was a bad person in the traditional sense, he had his own principles. For example, he respected his status and had the bearing of a master. He wasn't unscrupulous like some people. In addition, he had an ambitious and ruthless temperament. Even though his cultivation was lower than Jinluan Fuang and Daoist Baixing, when it came to fighting, he was better than them. Xiao Feng was similar. Even though his cultivation was very strong, his fighting ability was far beyond his cultivation level. It was because of his heroic spirit that reached the clouds. Song Qingshu purposely said this to make Huang Chang feel apprehensive. At his level of cultivation, if he left a flaw in his heart, it would have a terrifying effect on his strength. Who knew that Huang Chang didn't care? The way of the world is heartless. Whether it's despicable or unscrupulous, it's just the shackles that people put on themselves. Do you think I care about the moral standards of the world? Song Qingshu remembered that Huang Chang practiced Taoist martial art. Taoists have always adhered to the concept of heaven and earth are heartless and treat all living things as dogs. Huang Chang had also cultivated to this level. It would be strange if he cared about methods. This is going to be difficult. Song Qingshu frowned. He wasn't afraid of Huang Chang if he was alone, but he had 3 women with him. If Huang Chang decided to attack them, he wasn't sure he could protect everyone. And that was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that unless they fought to the death, he did not have the confidence to keep Huang Chang here. Once Huang Chang revealed the news of this place to Zhao Guo, the rare honeymoon period between the two sides would be interrupted, and a series of unpredictable chain reactions would occur. At this time, Huang Chang spoke again. His words surprised everyone. "I know what you are worried about. You don't have to worry about it. I am not here to be your enemy." Huh! Song Qingshu stared blankly. The two of them had fought every time they met, causing him to instinctively think that Huang Chang was here to cause trouble again. "I won't do anything to them, and I won't tell anyone else what I saw today, but—" Huang Chang changed the topic. "But you have to promise me something." "What is it?" Song Qingshu asked in a low voice. At the same time, he quickly calculated whether or not he could control the other. After all, Huang Chang's condition was definitely a difficult task. He didn't want to be tied down because of it. "Actually, concubine Wu has already stated this condition," Huang Chang continued. "Take Qin Yuan out of the palace." Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the other's condition to be so simple. As if sensing their confusion, Huang Chang looked deeply at Qin Yuan and continued, "This woman is unlucky. Staying in the palace will harm the great Song's fortune." Hearing his evaluation, Qin Yuan's charming face instantly paled. Her body swayed a few times. If Aka hadn't held her up, she might have fallen to the ground. Song Qingshu was speechless. "I say, old Huang, why didn't I see that you have the potential to be a fraud? Fortune is illusory, and often used by ambitious people to deceive the common people. Why do you, a learned great-grandmaster, believe in this? He couldn't help but think of Newton in his previous life. He was the best in physics and a super genius in mathematics. In his later years, he devoted his energy to theology. Could it be that these geniuses all reached the same goal when they reached a certain level? I'm not listening to hearsay. I have my own evidence, Huang Chang said calmly. In the past year, I've been observing the stars at night. I found that ever since Chen Yuanyuan came, the North Star, which represents the Emperor of the Great Song, has gradually dimmed. I don't want the Great Song to follow in the footsteps of the Ming dynasty. Song Qingshu frowned. You blame the rise and fall of a country on a woman. The people of your era are really ridiculous. Hearing Song Qingshu argue for her, Chen Yuanyuan's eyes showed a trace of gratitude. Even Ah Ku's gaze softened when she looked at him. Huang Chang said calmly, I didn't come here to argue with you. If it wasn't for the fact that you saved the princess of this dynasty and vindicated Yu Fei, I wouldn't have let her live. I would have taken her life. In fact, there was another purpose that he didn't say. This way, he could sell a favor to Song Qingshu and also have something to use against him. Why not? Song Qingshu frowned slightly. He was about to say something when Chen Yuanyuan stepped forward and pulled his arm. Young master, you don't have to speak for me. I didn't want to stay in this imperial palace. It's good to take this opportunity to leave. Okay, I'll take you out later. Song Qingshu nodded. After all, it was dangerous for her to stay in the imperial palace. In addition, Aku had the same intention. There was really no need to fight to keep her here. Huang Chang looked thoughtfully at Song Qingshu. Let me give you a friendly advice. After you take her out, it's best to send her as far away as possible. This woman is not good. If you keep her by your side, it will affect your luck. It's not easy for you to have such achievements at such a young age. Don't let beauty ruin your future. Song Qingshu sneered. You don't have to worry about me. I don't believe in such nonsense. Not only will I not send her away, but I will also keep her by my side. Time will prove everything. Hearing his words, Li Yuanji's expression changed slightly. She was worried for her lover. She wanted to say something, but when she thought of Chen Yuanyuan, whom she had been getting along well with, she didn't say anything in the end. Chen Yuanyuan's face, which had previously turned pale from Huang Chang's evaluation, now had a faint blush. She thought to herself, what does he mean by keeping me by his side? Aku knew that her mother had been under a lot of pressure these past few years. Her father had only been greedy for her mother's beauty and had not cared about her mother's feelings. Thus, her mother could only silently endure the slander and ridicule of the world. Now that she saw Song Qingshu's understanding and protection, her eyes lit up and a voice sounded in her heart. Could it be that he was doing all of this for me? Chen Yuanyuan was a generation younger than Song Qingshu, so Aku didn't think too much about it. In the end, he is still a young man. Lust is like a knife above his head. Huang Chang didn't say anything else. His figure gradually disappeared into the darkness. Huang Chang's words caused the people in the room to have strange expressions. Fortunately, Aku broke the awkwardness. Brother Song, where do you plan on sending my mother? On one hand, she hated this man who had changed her life, but on the other hand, she had an indescribable feeling for him. However, seeing that he had stood up for her mother, her words were naturally much more polite and gentle. Song Qingshu bitterly laughed. You have to ask yourselves. You mother and daughter should discuss this and see where you plan on going. Chen Yuanyuan faintly sighed. After we leave the imperial palace, young master can just send me to a random nunnery. These past few years, I have been living under the lamp of an old Buddha. Unfortunately, my fate in the mortal world has not been fulfilled yet, so I have not made up my mind. This is a good opportunity for me to shed my hair and cultivate. It can also be considered as fulfilling my wish. No. Song Qingshu and Ah Ku said in unison. Ah Ku glanced at Song Qingshu. Then, she hugged Chen Yuanyuan's arm and pressed her face against it. Mother, you are so cruel to become a nun. Do you not want me any more? Why would I not want you? Chen Yuanyuan lovingly caressed her daughter's hair. But a nun is a nun. When that time comes, you will be brainwashed by those nuns. Who knows, you might not even want to see me anymore. Aku seemed to have seen the future, and the more she spoke, the sadder she became. Song Qingshu coughed and said, Madam is a peerless beauty. If you go to cultivate, I'm afraid that it won't take long for the men nearby to flock to you. In addition, Madam's reputation is too great. I'm afraid that it will attract some extreme people. By then, Madam's safety will not be guaranteed. In fact, there were many things that were not convenient for him to say. One must know that in the ancient times, there were many nunneries and female Taoist temples that would turn into brothels due to various reasons. Take Yu Xuanji for example. After he became a nun, he had an endless stream of patrons. Be it in terms of reputation or beauty, Chen Yuanyuan far surpassed Yu Xuanji. Song Qingshu could already imagine the scene when she entered the nunnery. This was not Shanghai Pass, and Chen Yuanyuan did not have the ability to protect herself. Song Qingshu did not have the energy to protect her all the time. Hence, he felt that it was too dangerous to cultivate in the nunnery. Yes, what Brother Song said is exactly what I wanted to say. Ako hurriedly added, If I don't go to the nunnery, where else can I go? Chen Yuanyuan sighed, and she seemed to be in a daze. Song Qingshu suggested, Why don't you go back to the Qin family of Haining? Didn't Madame return to the Qin family? Madame's uncle, the current patriarch of the Qin family, is the third minister in the imperial court. He is in charge of the finances of the world. He has a high position and people call him the minister of Ji. He will definitely be able to protect you. The third minister was a system that existed in the early northern Song dynasty. It was abolished in the later period. But because of the chaotic butterfly effect in this world, the southern Song dynasty still retained this system. Chen Yuanyuan shook her head and said, Mister, you may not know this, but the Chen family prides themselves on being a family of scholars. In their eyes, I am a woman who has brought shame to the family. Who would be willing to accept me? The reason why they accepted my identity was because my uncle, Chen Ziqiang, is a core member of Han Xingzhou's group. Han Xingzhou wanted to ally with Wu Sangui, so he made use of him. Furthermore, I escaped from the imperial palace. As long as I step into the Chen family, they will send me back to the imperial palace on the same day. Chapter 1345. Chen Yuanyuan's face reddened. She couldn't help but say, Aku, what nonsense are you talking about? She knew that even if a normal woman and a young man lived together, there would be all kinds of rumors, especially when her identity was so sensitive. I am not speaking nonsense. Didn't Brother Song and Huang Chang say the same thing? Aku was still a young girl who had not seen much of the world. She did not understand the risks behind this. Prince Song was just responding to Huang Chang's words. Chen Yuanyuan almost stomped her feet. She thought, my silly daughter, in the future, men will eat her up and she will be grateful. It's not that I'm just being perfunctory. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. How about this, if Madame doesn't mind, you can stay at my place for a period of time. We'll talk about it when you think of a place to go. Chen Yuanyuan's charming face was flushed, and her big watery eyes were filled with incomparable awkwardness. I'm afraid it's not very good. Song Qingshu waved his hand. Foreign, do not worry. I am upright, I am not afraid of any rumors. Chen Yuanyuan was speechless. Of course you are a man, of course you are not afraid. It is always us women who get hurt. But she quickly realized that her reputation was already bad enough. As the saying goes, debt does not weigh on one's body. Also, he was helping out of kindness. Then I will trouble Master. Chen Yuanyuan bowed and said softly. Aku also looked gratefully at Song Qingshu. Brother Song, thank you. Being stared at by two calamitous beauties, even Song Qingshu, with his strong will, was dazed for a moment. He was worried that he would lose his composure if he continued to stare. He said in a hurry, Huang Chang came just now. He might have alerted others. We should leave the palace as soon as possible. In such a hurry? Chen Yuanyuan instinctively looked at her daughter. Her reluctance to part with her was clear in her words. Even though Aku was also reluctant to part with her, for safety reasons, she also urged, Mother, leave the palace first. I will find opportunities to come see you often. Song Qingshu criticized in his heart, thinking, You are an imperial concubine who is favored, even if you and Zhao Go are only husband and wife in name, but other people do not know, how would they dare to let you leave the palace as you please? Chen Yuanyuan was obviously thinking the same thing as him. It's easier said than done for you to leave the palace. Aku pursed her lips and smiled. She tugged on Song Qingshu's sleeve and said, Brother Song's kung fu is so strong that he can come and go as he pleases in the palace. If I miss you, I can just ask him to take me out of the palace quietly. Song Qingshu's face was filled with black lines. He thought to himself, if you often walk by the river, how can you not wet your shoes? He subconsciously teased, previously, you said that if I complete your request, you'll promise me one thing. I wonder if it's still true now? Aku's heart skipped a beat. Of course it counts. Then can I make a request now? Song Qingshu looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. Aku's heart beat even faster. The young girl's modesty caused her to reflexively refuse. But you clearly didn't complete my request. Song Qingshu immediately became gloomy. Although I didn't kill the assassin or Huang Chang, I saved your mother. In addition, I will have to take care of her and protect her for a period of time. No matter how you look at it, I can still fulfill your previous request. Then, after my mother is settled, then you have completed your request, Aku said with a red face. Song Qingshu's eyes lit up. Then when the time comes, I can make any request I want from you. Aku somewhat regretted making him stay. She didn't even need to look in the mirror to know that she was blushing. She thought to herself, how do you expect me to respond to such a question? Seeing that the young girl had her head lowered and was silent, Song Qingshu suddenly felt that this was particularly interesting. If you don't say anything, then I'll take it as a silent agreement? Aku opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. Song Qingshu laughed. Alright, I won't tease you anymore. I'll leave first. Take care of yourself in the palace. If there's anything urgent, you can contact me according to the method I taught you just now. Well, you have to be careful yourself. Aku felt her vision blur, and Song Qingshu was no longer in the room. For a moment, she couldn't help but stand on the spot, feeling lost. When Song Qingshu returned to the cold palace, he found that both Chen Yuanyuan and Li Yuanji had a strange expression on their faces. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "What's wrong with you guys?" Chen Yuanyuan smiled but didn't say anything. It was Li Yuanji who said in a lively manner, "Just now, Sister Yuanyuan and I made a bet on how long it would take for you to come back. Sister Yuanyuan said that with your lightness skill, you could come back in the time it takes to drink 3 cups of tea. However, I know your character. You definitely want to stay there and have some fun with Aku, so I concluded that you wouldn't be able to come back in less than an hour." Seeing Chen Yuanyuan's faint smile, Song Qingshu was extremely embarrassed. After all, he was teasing her daughter. He was a little angry and wanted to pull Li Yuanji over. "You stinky girl, are you deliberately making it difficult for me?" Unexpectedly, Li Yuanji was already prepared. Like an agile rabbit, she instantly hid behind Chen Yuanyuan. "Sister Yuanyuan, someone wants to kill me to silence me, don't hide. No one can save you today," Song Qingshu deliberately said fiercely. Seeing Song Qingshu pouncing over, Li Yuanji cried out in alarm. She pushed Chen Yuanyuan forward, and took the opportunity to hide further behind. Chen Yuanyuan originally thought that Li Yuanji was only using her as a shield. She didn't expect that the other party would turn her into a moving shield. In fact, even if she had expected it, she couldn't do anything about it. After all, Li Yuanji knew martial arts, and she was just a delicate and weak woman. Hearing Chen Yuanyuan's cry of alarm, Song Qingshu subconsciously reached out to catch her, holding her steady so that she wouldn't fall. In the end, he couldn't help but feel extremely embarrassed. It should be known that with his character, if he wanted to take advantage of someone, he would do it openly. He didn't care about such petty tricks. Therefore, the situation in front of him was what he hated the most. It was clearly not his intention, but it made his glorious and imposing image fall into the Mariana Trench. Chen Yuanyuan was still smiling a moment ago, but now her smile froze on her face. Her gaze fell on the other party's hand on her chest. She opened her mouth, but found that she couldn't say anything. "Hey, what's wrong with the two of you?" Li Yuanji hid behind them. Who knew that after waiting for a long time, Song Qingshu still hadn't caught up? When she looked back, she saw that the two of them were quietly hugging each other. No, nothing. After all, Chen Yuanyuan was someone who had experienced great storms. After a while of buffering, she had already come back to her senses. She quietly took a step back. "Just now you almost pushed me down. Fortunately, Prince Song supported me." Li Yuanji stuck out her tongue. "I'm sorry, Sister Yuanyuan. You don't have to be so polite with me." Chen Yuanyuan dotingly stroked her hair. Seeing that Chen Yuanyuan acted as if nothing had happened, Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh. There was indeed a difference between a mature woman and a young and inexperienced girl. It was much easier to interact with a mature woman. Seeing that the two of them were chatting endlessly, Song Qingshu couldn't help but say, "It's getting late. Let's leave the palace first." Li Yuanji giggled and said, "Okay, I'll give you a chance to hug each of them." As she spoke, she opened her arms, indicating for Song Qingshu to come between the two of them and hug them. On the side, Chen Yuanyuan couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. She thought that she had cultivated alone for so many years, and a man had never even touched the corner of her clothes. Who knew that during this time, she would be hugged and touched by Song Qingshu? Really, but when she thought about how she had been in contact with Song Qingshu before, a mere hug didn't count as much. Chen Yuanyuan calmed her mood and her face returned to its usual graceful and gentle smile. "Thank you, young master." Song Qingshu nodded. Hugging the two of them, he turned into a sharp arrow and quickly flew out of the palace. Chapter 1346. After returning to the Fu, Song Qingshu didn't enter from the front door. Like a thief, he snuck into the room. Because he was worried about Chen Yuanyuan's safety, he specially arranged for her to stay in the room next door. Then, he ordered the servant girls to prepare toiletries and other things and put them in front of her room door. From beginning to end, he didn't meet Chen Yuanyuan face to face. The main reason he did this was because Chen Yuanyuan's identity was too sensitive. She was a femme fatale in the hearts of the world, and he had secretly brought her out of the palace. The servant girls and manservants in this Fu were all prepared by the court for him. There were definitely spies from various powers. If someone knew that Chen Yuanyuan was here, it would be very troublesome. Song Qingshu had already made plans. He decided to go out tomorrow and find some trustworthy servant girls and manservants to replace the servants in the Fu. However, it was already late and it wasn't convenient for him to stay in Chen Yuanyuan's room for long. So, he had her rest early. AI. Looking at Song Qingshu's back, Chen Yuanyuan wanted to say something but stopped. Song Qingshu smiled and said, "I'm just next door. If there's any trouble, I'll immediately come over to protect you. So, madam, you don't need to worry about danger. Go to bed early." Thank you for your trouble, young master. Chun Yuan's face was slightly red. In fact, what she wanted to say was that because she saw Song Qinshu today, she hadn't eaten anything yet. Right now, her stomach was already rumbling with hunger. However, women were more concerned about their own image. She always felt that asking a man for food was somewhat indecent. After hesitating for a moment, she still didn't say it. She thought that since Li Yuanji hadn't eaten, when she was hungry and acted like a spoiled child in front of Song Qinshu, the two of them would naturally remember that she was also hungry next door. Meanwhile, when Song Qinshu returned to his room, Li Yuanji happily jumped into his arms. The two of them were affectionate for a while. Then, Song Qinshu asked, Yuanji Mimi, when do you plan to leave for Yangzhou? Li Yuanji's small mouth curled. What? You want to drive me away so quickly? Are you afraid that I'll ruin your and Yuanji's good time? Song Qinshu was speechless for a while. That's not what I meant. I just want to know in advance so that I can arrange the following time more rationally. Also, don't make that kind of joke so casually. If others heard it, you don't know how awkward it would be. Feeling sorry for me so soon? Li Yuanji giggled. I'm just joking with you. I plan to leave early tomorrow morning. So early? Song Qinshu asked in surprise. Li Yuanji gradually stopped smiling. I've been out for so long. If I don't go back to visit my parents, it will be unfilial. I couldn't do anything in the palace before, but now that I'm out, I naturally have to go back as soon as possible. Otherwise, my conscience will be uneasy. Moreover, my father, after being defeated by you, the difference between before and after is too great. I'm afraid it will be very difficult for him to recover. I also need to console him. In that case, I can't stop you, Song Qinshu nodded. But I haven't finished my business yet, so I can't see you off personally. The Golden Snake Camp has a branch here, but there are no masters. I'm worried about your safety on the way. Li Yuanji raised her chin and said confidently, Don't worry, brother Song. All these years, I've traveled all over the country. Am I not alive and kicking? Seeing her contented look, Song Qinshu lovingly pinched her nose. Today is different from the past. In the past, you were alone and didn't have any enemies. But now you are my woman. What if my enemies can't deal with me and find you to deal with? I have to guard against that. As the daughter of a feudal lord, Li Yuanji naturally understood that he wasn't speaking without thinking. Thinking of the enemy holding her hostage to threaten Song Qinshu, she couldn't help but slightly change her expression. But when she heard her lover say that she was his woman, her heart was quickly replaced by a sweet feeling. Song Qinshu continued, I'll teach you a set of light body techniques so that you will have the ability to protect yourself when you encounter danger. Wow, Li Yuanji's eyes brightened. Back then, she was also a girl obsessed with martial arts. In order to get her master Lu Feiqing to teach her martial arts, she spent a lot of effort. Do you know the position of the Book of Changes? Song Qinshu asked. Among the lightness skills he knew, the wave-like subtle steps was most suitable for women to practice. At the same time, it also had a nature-defying dodging effect, which was very useful when facing masters. I roughly remember. Li Yuanji was the daughter of the admiral's mansion, and her master Lu Feiqing was a disciple of the Wudong sect. Whether it was military education or Taoist tradition, they all involved some things about the Book of Changes. In addition, she was smart, so those things were imprinted in her mind from a very young age. Then it'll be twice the result with half the effort. Song Qinshu was overjoyed. I'll teach you the formula while demonstrating. Watch carefully. Wave-like subtle steps. Silk socks produce dust. Returning sister. Innocent. Song Qinshu demonstrated in front of her several times. Li Yuanji remembered most of it, but when she actually started to walk, she would inexplicably fall after a few steps. It was obvious that she failed. What's going on? Song Qinshu practiced martial arts as if he had a plug-in. He had never practiced martial arts step by step, so he naturally didn't understand what kind of problem Li Yuanji had encountered. At first, he thought that she was not qualified enough, so he could only patiently explain it a few more times. Unfortunately, Li Yuanji still encountered the same problem. I don't know. I clearly remember those steps, but after a few steps, I felt annoyed and nauseous. I couldn't take the next step no matter how hard I tried. Li Yuanji said with a pout. Obviously, she felt a little embarrassed after running into a wall several times. Song Qingshu reached out and felt her pulse. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind, and he found the reason. I understand. Wave-like subtle steps is a very advanced martial art. It requires the practitioner to have a deep internal strength. Every step is closely related to internal strength. It's definitely not just walking. If someone without the foundation of internal strength forcefully walks wave-like subtle steps, it will cause the danger of self-destructing meridians. Li Yuanji's pretty face was slightly pale. Fortunately, she didn't try to be brave just now. Otherwise, if she was paralyzed, it would be worse than death. I originally planned to teach you another internal strength. In that case, let's learn internal strength first and improve your internal strength. After all, in this martial arts world, internal strength was the foundation of everything. Only when the internal strength was high, other abilities could be improved by leaps and bounds. What internal strength? Li Yuanji asked curiously. She used to study under Lu Feiqing and learned some internal strength mental cultivation methods of the Wudong sect. However, because Lu Feiqing's position in the Wudong sect was not high, she naturally couldn't learn the top pure yang limitless technique, Wudong 9 yang technique, and so on. Song Qingshu took out a booklet, on which various human silhouettes were drawn. There were some red lines inside the human body. This book is called Magaduo Country Wants to Stop Movement and Achieve Shinzu Sutra. It was passed down from India's Magaduo country. It is a magical technique. When he met Azi Yutanji, he cleverly took the Sanskrit version of the muscle-bone strengthening scripture from the Shaolin temple. Unexpectedly, Li Yuanji shook her head. What devil, earth, broken legs. The name is so ugly. It is also some Indian martial art. I don't want to learn it. Brother Song, can you teach me a more powerful martial art from the Central Plains? This internal strength is also called Shinzu Sutra. Although the name is a little ugly, it is really very powerful. It is the most profound internal strength in India. Its position in India is similar to the muscle-bone strengthening scripture and 9 Yin Sutra of the Central Plains. Although Song Qingshu also had the muscle-bone strengthening scripture and 9 Yin Sutra, the muscle-bone strengthening scripture was in Sanskrit and he had never had time to translate it. The 9 Yin Sutra was too profound and obscure. Even top masters like Wu Ju and Guo Jing could not be considered to have truly mastered it after decades of practice. Li Yuanji's martial arts skills were even worse. It would take too long for her to practice. If she learned the method that Zhou Zhirui used, her foundation would be unstable and it would be easy for her to go berserk. As for the joyful true energy and the God-illuminating scripture, they were not suitable for women to practice. The everlasting youth art also had a high threshold, and the absorbing star's great skill had too many drawbacks. After thinking about it, the most suitable one for Li Yuanji was the Shinzu Sutra. Song Qingshu continued to explain, this internal strength is very suitable for people who have no foundation to practice it. It can progress very quickly and the internal strength obtained is amazing. He was indeed not lying. In the original work, Yu Tanji's aptitude was average. He learned this martial art halfway through, and the internal strength he obtained was unexpectedly able to suppress the internal strength of the martial art genius Xiao Feng. Although it was not without the help of the ice silkworm, the Shinzu Sutra was the foundation. Alright, since Brother Song said so, then there must be no problem. Hurry up and tell me how to practice it. Li Yuanji looked at him with a face full of excitement. Practice according to the postures of these little people. The red lines represent the route of the genuine qi. Song Qingshu handed her the booklet with the Shenzhou Sutra, which was copied from the Sanskrit version of the muscle-bone strengthening scripture. Li Yuanji couldn't wait to take the booklet and practiced according to the postures drawn on it. After a while, she couldn't help but have a strange expression. Brother Song, is the creator of this martial art a pervert? Song Qingshu was confused. Of course not, he is an eminent monk. Why do you ask this? Li Yuanji's face turned red and she said timidly, this posture is a bit too shameful. Song Qingshu had been guiding her on the route of the genuine qi. After hearing her words, he noticed her current posture and almost had a nosebleed. It turned out that at this time, Li Yuanji was standing on one leg with her body slightly leaning forward. The curve of her small and exquisite chest was particularly obvious, and the other foot was raised high behind her head. At this moment, her posture vividly displayed the gentleness and beauty of a young girl, showing off her voluptuous figure. Of course, it wouldn't be considered much in his previous world, but in this feudal and conservative era, it was indeed somewhat shocking. This is the unique secret of yoga in India. Although these postures are a bit strange, they can not only strengthen the sea of consciousness of the practitioner, but also greatly expand the practitioner's flexibility. If a woman practices it, she can also maintain her youth. Song Qingshu swallowed his saliva and explained in a hoarse voice. Really? Then I have to practice seriously. Li Yuanji's beautiful eyes lit up. She completely ignored the other effects, but was interested in the last sentence to maintain her youth. After all, there was no woman who didn't love beauty. Looking at Li Yuanji's posture that made people's noses bleed, Song Qingshu only felt that the fire in his lower abdomen was burning more and more fiercely. Finally, when she posed with both hands on the ground, one foot on the ground, and the other up in a split posture, Song Qingshu couldn't bear it anymore and directly pounced on her. Brother Song, I'm still practicing, at this time. Because of the practice, Li Yuanji's skin was oozing a thin layer of sweat, and her face was also very attractive. You continue practicing, I'll play. Song Qingshu only felt that his body was getting more and more swollen, and couldn't help but lean behind the girl. Chapter 1347. Sensing Song Qingshu's actions, Li Yuanji could vaguely guess what he was going to do. Her pretty face became redder than rouge, and she said coquettishly, Brother Song, how am I supposed to practice if you do this? Song Qingshu replied seriously, Your foundation of Nigong is too weak. I will use my true qi to guide you and help you build a foundation, so that you can achieve twice the results with half the effort. Li Yuanji also admired her lover's ability to speak nonsense with a straight face. She bit her lips and tried to stand up. I really don't know what to do with you. Let me serve you first before practicing. Who knew that Song Qingshu would immediately stop her? No need. You continue practicing, so that I can guide the circulation of true qi in your meridians. Li Yuanji was immediately embarrassed. Just this position? Of course. Song Qingshu wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth and directly pounced on her. Meanwhile, Chen Yuanyuan's stomach was unbearably hungry, and she finally couldn't help but go out. She was afraid that her whereabouts would be exposed, but she didn't dare to call the maidservants, so she could only go next door to find Song Qingshu and Song Qingshu. Just when she was hesitating on what to say later, Chen Yuanyuan suddenly heard a low moan that sounded like a sob, and it made her heart beat wildly. She was no longer an inexperienced girl, so she naturally understood what this sound was. She blushed and spat and was about to turn around to go back, but for some reason, she didn't know why she stopped in her tracks. Should I go take a look? Once this idea appeared, Chen Yuanyuan couldn't hold it in anymore. She struggled in her heart for a long time, and when she came to her senses, she found that she was already standing by the window. Chen Yuan's originally charming face could be said to be green and beautiful at this moment. She pursed her lips and kept hinting to herself, "Just take a look, and then leave immediately. I won't stay any longer." Through the small gap in the window, the situation in the room was imprinted in her eyes. When she saw the scene inside, she almost cried out in surprise, and hurriedly covered her mouth with her hands. "These two really don't know shame," Chen Yuan secretly spat. Although the human nature of voyeurism made her want to look a little longer, many years of education made her regain her rationality, and she blushed as she trotted away. After returning to the room, Chen Yuan closed the door and leaned her back against the door. Her full chest was heaving up and down. It was obvious that she was in a very bad mood. She didn't know if it was because she was too hungry or something else, but the jogging seemed to have used up all the strength in her body. At this moment, she found that her legs were unbelievably weak. Fortunately, there was a door behind her, so she didn't fall to the ground. In fact, the reason why he came over was because Li Yuanji urged him to come and find out what Chen Yuan was thinking. After all, what happened just now was too embarrassing. In addition, she completely forgot to lower her voice, afraid that the next door would hear, so she found a reason to ask Song Qingshu to come over. In fact, when Chen Yuan was hiding outside the window, Song Qingshu had already discovered it. However, he couldn't tell Li Yuanji the truth, or else the girl would be embarrassed to death. He was afraid that she wouldn't be willing to cooperate with him in the future, so he pretended to come over and ask. With Song Qingshu's current cultivation, he naturally noticed that Chen Yuan wasn't asleep, so he continued to knock on the door and said, "It's a bit rude to come over so late at night, madam. However, after Sister Yuanji reminded me, I remembered that you two haven't eaten, so I brought some food over." Of course, there had to be a good reason to come over, and bringing food was obviously a good one. No need. Although Chen Yuan was so hungry that her eyes were a little blurry, she didn't dare to let him in her current state. However, what made her collapse was that she heard a squeak, and the door actually opened. I didn't do it on purpose. I just randomly knocked on the door. I didn't expect that your door wouldn't be locked." Song Qingshu also hurriedly explained. After all, as a man, he came to find a ridiculously beautiful woman in the middle of the night, and even opened her door. No matter how you looked at it, it seemed like he was up to no good. However, when he saw Chen Yuan's current posture of twisting into a ball on the bed, which vividly highlighted her soft and beautiful figure, as well as her curvy front and back curves, he almost had a nosebleed. Chen Yuan also exclaimed. Obviously, she didn't expect such a situation. Only then did she realize that when she came back, she was in a bad mood, so she subconsciously closed the door and forgot to lock it. "I'm really sorry, I didn't do it on purpose." At this moment, Song Qingshu was acting like a pure virgin, and he looked extremely uneasy. At the same time, he was also cursing in his heart. Could it be that because he had been cheating on her too much previously, he had become a scapegoat again and again? Close the door. Chen Yuan was so anxious that she was about to cry. "Oh, okay." Song Qingshu was at a loss as he casually closed the door. Chen Yuan almost fainted when she saw this. She glared at him angrily. "Who let you in?" Only then did Song Qingshu realize that she wanted him to close the door and leave. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "I'm really rude, madam. I'll leave now." With that said, he didn't hesitate and turned to leave. Chen Yuan had just heaved a sigh of relief when she saw him suddenly turn around again. Her heart was in her throat again. "These are the pastries that little sister Yuanji asked me to bring over. Madam must be very hungry, so I'll leave them here first. Madam can slowly eat them later." Seeing a calamitous beauty in such an exaggerated position on the bed, Song Qingshu said this with a rare blush on his face. He planned to leave in a hurry. "Wait a moment," Looking at the delicious food on the table, Chen Yuan suddenly called out to him. Her expression was uncertain, and it was obvious that she was having a fierce mental struggle. "Does Madam have any other instructions?" Song Qingshu turned around and said with his head lowered. Even though the scene in front of him was so bloodthirsty, he knew that Chen Yuan must be extremely embarrassed right now, so he didn't dare to show any strange expression. Chen Yuan bit her lips. "You, come over for a moment." When Song Qingshu heard this, he couldn't help but raise his head to look at her in shock. His heartbeat also sped up. Looking at the peerless beauty on the bed, he couldn't help but feel conflicted. Could it be that she couldn't bear the loneliness these years, and in addition to seeing me and that girl being intimate, she couldn't bear the drought and needed to find me to nourish her? When the time came, should I accept it, or decline it first before accepting it? "Come here." Seeing Song Qingshu standing in place and staring at her in a daze, Chen Yuan was shy and angry. I'm coming." Song Qingshu jogged over, hesitating on how to start. Should he first play with his asterisk? But for a mature woman like her, it might be good to go straight to the point. "Young master, please, help me. My joint is stuck, there's no way to return to normal." Chen Yuan's voice became softer and softer. Even though she also felt embarrassed, she wasn't an insensible little girl. After the initial panic and shame, she quickly recovered. After all, she didn't want such a shameful scene to be seen. Rather than continuing to be in such an embarrassing position, she might as well ask him for help. Otherwise, she would have to face this problem tomorrow morning. At that time, even Li Yuanji might see it. Thinking that she was imitating Li Yuanji's actions just now, if she saw it tomorrow, the two of them might not be able to look at each other for the rest of their lives. Hearing her words, Song Qingshu understood that he had misunderstood her meaning. But thinking about how Chen Yuan had embarrassed herself by imitating those yoga movements, he couldn't help but want to laugh. "You're not allowed to laugh." Chen Yuan noticed his smile and couldn't help but angrily shout, wishing that there was a hole in the ground that she could immediately crawl into. Okay, I won't laugh." Song Qingshu put away his smile, but the slightly raised corner of his mouth showed how happy he was in his heart. "Relax your entire body, don't resist me. I'll ease your joints bit by bit." Chapter 1348. As soon as Song Qingshu's hand touched Chen Yuan's body, he immediately felt her body stiffen. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Madam, didn't I tell you to relax? You're so nervous that you're even more tightly locked." Chen Yuan secretly rolled her eyes at him. How could a woman not be nervous when her body was touched by a man other than her husband? This was just an instinctive reaction. However, she also understood that this was not the time to be nervous. She took a deep breath and tried to relax her body. Then she whispered, "Come on." Hearing this, Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. It was as if this peerless beauty was sending him an ambiguous invitation. He hurriedly restrained his mind and focused on unlocking her. "Madam, bear with it first. It might be a little painful at first." Song Qingshu had already seen her current situation. The main reason was that she was too anxious to recover from this position. As a result, she was stuck. Now, the only way was to restore her previous position. Only then would he be able to free her hands and feet. Chen Yuan's voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible. Her cheeks were already burning hot. His words sounded like a husband comforting a young girl on her wedding night. Suddenly, she cried out in pain and woke up from her thoughts. It turned out that Song Qingshu was pressing her body down. Pain, Chen Yuan's body was very sensitive. Her resistance to pain was almost zero. The pain caused tears to appear in her eyes. If there were other men around, they would have pounced on Song Qingshu and fought him to the death. "Madam, it's almost done." A trace of cold sweat appeared on Song Qingshu's forehead. After all, it was indeed difficult to unlock her position and control the strength to not hurt her. The amazing feeling from his hand inevitably made Song Qingshu restless. He hurriedly tried to divert his attention. Fortunately, Madam's body is very flexible. That's why I was able to smoothly undo it. Chen Yuanyuan blushed but did not answer. Instead, she thought, I'd rather my body wasn't so flexible. That way, I wouldn't have been able to make that position and wouldn't have been so embarrassing to you. Under Song Qingshu's meticulous movements, Chen Yuanyuan felt her body lighten and finally returned to normal. As soon as she regained her freedom, Chen Yuanyuan stretched her limbs with excitement. She'd been locked up for too long earlier, and it caused her to slightly forget how her limbs felt. Ouch! Amidst her excitement, Chen Yuanyuan felt sore and numb all over her body. She couldn't help but frown. Madame's posture just now was overly stretched, causing some of the corresponding meridians to be slightly damaged. Song Qingshu explained, Why don't I help you massage them and use my zhenqi to nourish those damaged meridians? Chen Yuanyuan looked at him with a strange expression. Was he doing this unintentionally, or was he trying to take advantage of her? When Song Qingshu saw that she didn't respond for a long time, he finally realized that this world wasn't like his previous world where it was common for men to massage women and apply sunscreen. How could a woman in this world allow a man to casually touch her body? I was rash, Song Qingshu smiled apologetically. Madam, you don't have to worry. Even without zhenqi nourishment, you'll recover after a few days of rest. Chen Yuanyuan originally thought that since he'd touched the most private parts of her body, a simple massage was nothing. She was about to open her mouth and agree, but who knew that after hearing his words, she didn't know what to say. She couldn't, as a woman, take the initiative to ask him to touch her, right? Madam, rest early. I'll take my leave first. Song Qingshu smiled and stood up to walk out. Wait! Chen Yuanyuan suddenly called out to him. Song Qingshu stopped his hand from closing the door and looked at her in confusion. Madam, do you have any other instructions? Chen Yuanyuan said with a red face. What happened tonight, Gongzi? Can you keep it a secret for me? Song Qingshu was stunned, and then an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. Madam, don't worry, this is a secret between the two of us. Chen Yuanyuan thought about the way he blinked his eyes when he left, and her whole body was so embarrassed that she directly burrowed into the quilt and covered her head with the quilt, as if she'd returned to the age of a shy girl. It's so embarrassing, so embarrassing. After Song Qingshu returned to the room, Li Yuanji heard the movement and opened her eyes in a daze. Brother Song, why were you gone for so long? Song Qingshu walked to the bedside, smiled slightly and said, There was a small accident, so I was delayed for a while. What accident? Li Yuanji twisted her body, pillowed her head on his lap, and looked up at him. It's nothing, go to sleep. Since he'd promised her, Song Qingshu naturally couldn't tell her what happened next door. Oh, Li Yuanji didn't ask further and suddenly remembered something. By the way, what about the thing I asked you to find out? What thing? After the incident next door just now, Song Qingshu didn't react. It's... Li Yuanji's face blushed. I just wanted to see if Sister Yuanyuan heard anything. She really didn't know why she was so bold and indulgent just now. After calming down, her first reaction was that she was afraid that Chen Yuanyuan would hear something, and then she really wouldn't be able to live in the future. Song Qingshu secretly laughed, thinking that these two women were really interesting. They both had secrets that they couldn't let others know, for fear that the other party would know. In comparison, it seemed that Chen Yuanyuan's was more shameful. What are you laughing at? Answer me quickly. Li Yuanji suddenly became anxious. Don't worry, she didn't hear anything. Song Qingshu explained. Really? Then why did you stay there for so long? Li Yuanji looked at him suspiciously. I chatted with her for a while. Song Qingshu was worried that she would continue to get to the bottom of the matter, so he hurriedly changed the topic. Do you remember the 2 martial arts I taught you before? I remember. Li Yuanji's skin blushed, thinking that you used such a shameful position to guide the true energy in my body to circulate, that kind of unforgettable feeling. I'm afraid I won't be able to forget it for the rest of my life. Do you know why I taught you these 2 martial arts? Song Qingshu asked. To satisfy your lust, this was the first thought that appeared in Li Yuanji's mind. Secretly sticking out her tongue, she threw this thought out of her mind and then answered, in order for me to have more power to protect myself in the future. This is only one of the reasons. Song Qingshu nodded. This time when you go to Yangzhou, you will see your father, and at the same time, you will also see you will see some sisters. You also know that many people are still brooding over the matter of your father joining hands with Mochi Fan to harm me. I am worried that they will vent their anger on you, so after you go to Yangzhou, teach these 2 martial arts to those sisters. This way, you will get closer to them, and second, they will be too embarrassed to bully you. Li Yuanji looked at this man in a daze. When she thought about how he had considered all these details for her, a layer of mist appeared in her eyes, and she was so moved that she hugged him. Song Gij, why are you so good to me? Silly girl, if I don't treat you well, who should I treat well to? Song Qingshu lightly patted her back and gently said. Li Yuanji's pair of eyes sparkled, and she directly pushed him down and sweetly said next to his ear, Song Gij, in the future, whatever position you want me to, I will do it to you. Song Qingshu had already been aroused by Chen Yuanyuan's words earlier, and now hearing her, it was as if he was struck by lightning, and the 2 of them rolled back into the blanket. The next day, after sending off Li Yuanji, Song Qingshu and Chen Yuanyuan walked side by side on the small path outside the city. Of course, in order to avoid trouble, Chen Yuanyuan's face was covered with a layer of veil, covering her devastatingly beautiful appearance. Gongzi, did you not sleep well last night? Seeing Song Qingshu yawning, Chen Yuanyuan held back a few times and finally opened her mouth to ask. The time I slept was too short, Song Qingshu said with a bitter smile. Chen Yuanyuan was confused, thinking that although she delayed him for a while last night, it was not too late, right? However, she had always been a cold person and quickly realized that after the other went back, he most likely spent the whole night with Li Yuanji. Pei, these 2 people are really shameless. Chen Yuanyuan secretly spat, and somewhat wanted to advise him not to use his youth to play with his body, but thinking that it would be too strange for her to say such words, she hesitated again, and in the end did not say it. After continuing to walk by his side for a while, Chen Yuanyuan could not help but ask curiously, Where are we going? Song Qingshu smiled slightly. The beggar clan. Since Shi Shangyun had already persuaded her father to do things according to the agreement, he should also keep his promise and let Shi Shangyun go. In fact, he did not want to expose his relationship with the beggar clan to others, but Chen Yuanyuan's identity was sensitive, and if he left her in the residence, he would not feel at ease, so he simply brought her with him. The beggar clan? Although Chen Yuanyuan was not a person of Jianghu, she had more or less heard of the beggar clan, and knew that it was one of the top clans in the world. Not long after, the 2 of them arrived at the beggar clan. Chen Yuliang had already received the news, and came out to welcome them. Yuliang greets Gongzi. When he saw Chen Yuanyuan beside Song Qingshu, he could not help but be amazed. Although Chen Yuanyuan's face was covered, her graceful figure, and the temperament she exuded as she stood there quietly, was enough to prove that she was a peerless beauty. In particular, her beautiful eyes, which were like the starry sky, made Chen Yuliang's heart beat faster even though he had never been attracted to women. The one with the surname Song is really lucky with women, always having such a peerless beauty by his side. Chen Yuliang cursed in his heart. He had also seen Zhou Zhirua in the past, and her ethereal appearance had left a deep impression on him. If it was not for the fact that he was obsessed with power and needed to use Zhou Zhirua to threaten Song Qingshu at that time, He might have done something improper to Zhou Zhiru. How is the one with the surname Wei? Song Qingshu asked as they walked towards the headquarters. The cold poison in her body is almost gone, but she is in a daze every day like a cripple, Chen Yuliang replied respectfully. Song Qingshu nodded. It would be strange if a proud genius like Wei Rulin did not become dispirited after suffering such a huge blow. As he pondered, he suddenly noticed Chen Yuliang's hesitant expression and could not help but ask, "Hey, why do you look so distressed? Did you encounter something difficult?" You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.